You think piracy was chaos, rum, roaring, and skull flags in the moonlight. Here's the twist. The Golden Age was a workplace with better branding. You wake on a sloop that smells of salt spray and tar, with a quartermaster acting like a CFO, a captain who only rules in a chase, and a crew that gets paid in shares, not sermons. It's a floating republic where freebooters and sea rovers vote on risk, split spoils in pieces of 8 and Spanish dollars, and fire only when math says worth it. The paradox? Pirates looked lawless to land, but aboard, the code was iron. Quick win for your inner navigator. If a black flag rises, it's a contract, not a curse. Strike your topsails, heave 2 hands before the mast, and you'll likely keep your surgeon, your clothes, and your breath. That's the sea roving reality. Terror as theatre, mercy as policy, and prize crews as logistics. We'll walk the entire pirate day today. Fast rigs trimmed to a knife's edge, dead reckoning under a sky that never lies, quartermasters turning booty into ledgers, cooks fighting fires that sulk, and surgeons pricing courage in silver when boarding gets loud. You'll feel the grog bite, the cannon smoke haze, and the lantern glow on wet decks when decisions get counted. We'll also pull apart myth versus history. Walking the plank? Fiction. The black spot? A novelist's joke. Real fear? Chain shot whistling through rigging while a Royal Navy frigate closes. Or the hush right before a hurricane asks if you're not so honest. You'll meet outlaw mariners who were men of fortune by necessity. Privateers turned pirates who didn't retire politely when the war ended. And women who fought like the articles paid them, which they did. By the end, you'll know why pirates preferred sloops and brigantines, how they fenced contraband without dying of paperwork, and how admiralty courts turned legend into rope. Settle in, dim the lights, and let the rhythm of watches carry you. If this kind of true grit storytelling keeps your mind purring, tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next voyage. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read them, and your ports and clocks become part of our next map. You wake to the tar and pitch reek that clings to the timber like old sins, and the first thing you hear is hemp lines groaning as the sloop eases on her anchor. Lantern glow on wet decks paints the world in honeyed smears. Gulls and shanties trade insults above your head, while salt spray freckles your cheeks awake. This isn't a theme park version of the golden age of piracy life. It's sea-roving reality, where the deck is never level, and the air tastes like iron and brine. You're one of the hands before the mast now, an outlaw mariner among men of fortune, learning fast that the ocean doesn't accept excuses, only seamanship. People think you came here chasing plunder because of a song. But myth versus history is messier. Maybe a Royal Navy frigate's press gangs borrowed your youth and spat you out hungry. Maybe a plantation dock stiffed your wages. Maybe the war ended and the privateers turned pirates kept sailing. Because honest work paid in promises. Atlantic Caribbean piracy was a labor market with better odds than starvation. On a pirate ship you vote on big things, split spoils in shares, and you're not flogged for sneezing wrong. Freedom is noisy, rough, and smells like bilge, but compared to the lash, it's a choir. Aboard, hierarchy is flatter than you expect, and sharper. The captain is the storm voice in a chase or a fight, but the quartermaster is the daily law. Keeper of the articles, buyer of supplies, and defender of the crew's purse. The boatswain, bosun, minds rigging and reefing. The gunner babies the iron teeth. The navigator lives with dead reckoning and a prayer. The carpenter carries the hull's heartbeat in his head. Surgeon is often a barber with nerve. The cook is alchemist, making miracles from weevils. Powder monkeys scamper with charges. Swabs keep the ship's skin clean so rot doesn't eat your future. Before you're truly one of the sea rovers, you sign the articles. The ship's constitution, not pirate poetry. There it is in lantern glow on wet decks. Shares for each hand, double shares for the gunner and navigator, perhaps a bonus for first over the rail in a boarding. Quarter share fund for the injured, A rule about lights out. A line promising no quarrels at cards that end with knives. You make your mark. Men of fortune laugh at kings until payday, then turn into notaries. The code is simple. Equality in danger, clarity in spoils, mercy for wounds, and no mercy for betrayal. Your classroom is the rig. Fast rigs matter. Sloop, brigantine, schooner, anything with fore and aft sails that bite the wind quick, lateen where it helps, reefing when squalls hiss. You learn to heave too, so the ship holds her breath, rides the punch, and keeps her spars. Hands to braces, shouts the boatswain. Hemp lines groaning become music as you swing the yards. You count time by bells, not clocks. Watches trade drowsy jokes, and the grog bite keeps teeth from mutinine. The sea will teach you balance faster than any tutor. Fall once, you bruise. Fall twice, you learn. Hunting is patience spiked with velocity. You ride the dawn line, eyes on the horizon, hunting for frigate prey too heavy to run and too proud to notice, or for fat merchantmen big on cargo and small on guns. The navigator stalks by sun and swell. Dead reckoning whispers, close enough, until land insists otherwise. When a mast tip pricks the sky, the captain chooses, raise more canvas and close like a rumour, or play dumb with shortened sail till the prize rolls near. The Spanish Garda, Costa, and French patrols hunt you back. Pirate hunters read the same weather. It's chess at 8 knots. Combat is rarely fair and never clean. Cannon smoke haze stings your eyes, and your world shrinks to splinters. Recoil and timing. The captain will try to cripple the prey. Rudder rig, nerve, because plunder swims poorly. When the moment hits, the cry goes up, and men move like a wave. Grapples out, the bonus for first over the rail burning in their ribs. You the prize crew leaping to turn. Them into ours. When the shouting settles, the quartermaster starts his tidy war. Lock the powder, count the prisoners, search the hold for contraband. Courage makes the charge. Discipline makes the payday. Plunder isn't just gold, it's the small wealth that floats empires. You learn to love the ring of Spanish dollars and pieces of 8, to weigh doubloons in your palm like warm bread, to inventory sugar, indigo, cacao, hides, tools, medicine, booty that makes ports purr. Ransoms are ledger talk with pistols holstered, cargo becomes shares by the scale, and the cook gets a bonus if the crew's spirits stay bright. Spoils are counted under lantern glow on wet decks. The articles keep hands honest, and the quartermaster's chalk turns chaos into equity. People romanticize plunder. Pirates romanticize accounting. Democracy here is loud and strategic. You can vote a captain out when peace replaces storm. You can vote to careen on a hidden beach and scrape the hull clean of murderous barnacle drag. Careening is shipyard plus vulnerability. Everyone ashore, tackle straining, hull canted, tar bubbling, sharks curious. The tar and pitch reek is a sacrament. You patch wormholes, cork seams, and pray the Spanish Garda Costa doesn't nose around. This is the part of pirate day-to-day that never shows on posters. Sweat, sand, gulls heckling from the tide line, and the bosun counting ribs on a lean crew. The day-to-day is a string of small salvations. You suck marrow from a decent stew and thank the cook like a priest. You listen to a surgeon's lecture on salt, scurvy, and bad luck, and you chew limes as if they were wages. Grogbite turns cold water into courage, but anyone who wobbles duty meets the quartermaster's stare and the article's teeth. Discipline without the lash? Not always, but often. You share in the prize, you share in the risk. That fairness turns swabs into professionals faster than sermons. Myth versus history again. Pirates loved violence less than they love speed. A clean heave-to, a surrendered cargo, a prize crew aboard and out. That's a perfect day. Murder ruins markets. Admiralty courts label you monsters. Execution dock waits with a tight schedule and an audience. Pardons and amnesties show up like rumors when governors need cleaner seas. But pirate hunters need poster boys, and you don't want your name used in a sermon. Between Royal Navy frigates and French patrols, survival is part seamanship, part paperwork avoidance, part sheer weather luck. Storms are the other magistrates out here. Hurricanes don't negotiate. Lateen and fore and aft sails must come down before the sky remembers another language. Reef fast, lash tight, pray louder than the creaking timbers. You'll see lightning write your fear in silver, and hear the hull complain in a tone that makes promises about the deep. And yet, when the bruise-coloured wall of rain finally tears past and the lanterns relight, you get that first quiet minute, lantern glow on wet decks, hemp lines groaning low, and you realize you still want tomorrow. That's when you know you're truly a sea dog. At night, the ship becomes a small town with strict zoning laws. A fiddler scrapes a tune. Gulls fall silent. Someone tells a yarn about buccaneers and freebooters who could smell prize crews miles off. You learn knots by touch and stories by heart. The navigator traces stars like signatures. The gunner oils temperamental friends. The quartermaster jots numbers, while pretending he doesn't care about numbers. Out beyond the rail, the dark is wide and patient. Inside it, the schooner breathes, and you, an outlaw mariner, start to believe the sea might sign your name correctly after all. By first light again, the routine resets. Lookouts aloft, fast rigs trimmed, a horizon twitch that could be a gull or a frigate's top gallant. Your hands remember reefing even before your head wakes fully. Myth says pirates were chaos. History says they were organized desperation with excellent marketing. You'll see the proof when a sail appears, and the captain smiles like weather about to change. The hunt teaches faster than any preacher, and the next mast on the rim might be your first honest prize, or a pirate hunter with room on his deck for your neck. If you want to understand the golden age of piracy life, don't start with skull flags. Start with math under lantern glow on wet decks. The articles read like a startup's term sheet, written by sea rovers, where every risk and reward gets priced. You, one of the hands before the mast, sign on for shares, not wages. Because life aboard a pirate ship is a partnership, raw, temporary, and real. Captain commands in chase and battle. The quartermaster rules the rest, guarding the chest and the crew like a lawyer with a cutlass. Myth versus history. Pirates didn't live in chaos. They voted, audited, and turned plunder into policy. It's outlaw mariners building order, because the ocean eats amateurs. Pay looks different when it doesn't arrive in pay packets. Shares replace salaries. One share for you, more for specialists. The gunner, navigator, carpenter. Double for the quartermaster who keeps everyone honest. First over the rail during a boarding earns a bonus. Because courage needs a price tag when cannons smoke haze, makes heroes scarce. Spoils become lines in a ledger. Pieces of 8 clinking like rain. Spanish dollars stacked by weight. The warm glow of doubloons counted out in front of witnesses. Booty isn't just coin, though. Sugar, cacao, indigo, tools, even medicine. All contraband becomes arithmetic. You finally see why pirates adored chalk. Democracy here is loud, salty, and practical. You elect a captain, but you can unelect him when the sea-roving reality turns slow or stupid. The quartermaster is the crew's teeth, settling disputes, issuing rations, assigning punishment that fits the articles instead of the captain's mood. Think of him as the CFO and internal affairs with a taste for grog bite. Fair when possible, feared when necessary. Big decisions. Careening a sloop, hunting a frigate prey, accepting a pardon, go to a full vote. When tempers rise, hemp lines groaning overhead make a better sermon than any chaplain. Discipline without the lash isn't a fairy tale. It's an incentive system. Deal from the chest, and you're ashore at the next sandspit. Shirk a watch, and the bosun's rope sings a short, sharp lesson. Show cowardice, and your shares shrink till your pride grows back. But lose an arm to a broadside, and the articles promise compensation. Silver for limb, more for eyes, and a hammock for life if the surgeon can't mend you. That social safety net made freebooters feel less expendable than on a Royal Navy frigate where press gangs wrote your biography. Equality wasn't perfect. It was functional. Rank is flatter, but not flavorless. The boatswain, bosun, owns the rigging and your spine. He teaches reefing by pain and repetition until lateen and other fore and aft sails feel like extra hands. The gunner is alchemist and mother to the cannon. Misfire his temper, and you'll clean the deck with a toothbrush carved from regret. The navigator's world is dead reckoning, stars, soundings, and a whispering fear of reefs. Heave to on his word, or bury your pride with the hull. Carpenters translate creaking timbers into diagnoses. Surgeons play dice with anatomy. Cooks keep morale from mutiny with salt and sorcery. Everyone is a specialist. Everyone is replaceable. Both truths keep you sharp. Articles double as peace treaties. No drunken quarrels after dark. No gambling debts collected at knife point. Keep your flintlock clean. Lights out when the quartermaster says the word. They even regulate music. Gulls and shanties are for off-watch, not for masking orders when French patrols might be sniffing the wind. The code protects sleep as fiercely as treasure, because tired hands drop yards, and soon your timber confetti. You'll be shocked how comforting rules feel once the horizon erases land. The ocean loves clarity. Voting isn't theater. It's survival economics. Want to chase that schooner with fast rigs? The captain argues weather and odds. The quartermaster argues stores, water, and whether a Spanish guardacosta lurks beyond. You and the crew raise hands as if your ribs are ballot boxes. Pursue or pass, careen or keep sailing, accept pardons and amnesties, or laugh and drink to another year as men of fortune. These choices get decided in front of everyone. If the captain loses and sulks, he'll lose the next vote faster. Reputation is rope. Slack it foolishly and it hangs you. Shares shape behavior in the heat of a fight. The bonus for first over the rail turns hesitation into sprint. But the articles forbid unnecessary killing because dead merchants don't pay ransoms. The quartermaster often leads the prize crews because he knows the inventory and the angles. He can smell a hidden strongbox the way a sea dog smells a squall. Once a prize is secured, the quartermaster seals the powder, posts swabs where knives once flashed, and starts the conversion of chaos into lists. Cannon thunder makes legends. The ledger makes dinner. Fairness buys ferocity. You'll risk your skin because the math respects it. Shares for hazard, compensation for wounds, and a voice that counts when the ship isn't under fire. Compare that to a privateer's turned pirate's origin story. War ends, letters of marque expire, pay dries up, and honest docks offer hunger. Out here, a brigantine with a clean bottom and a clean balance sheet looks like dignity. Myth versus history again. Pirates didn't reject structure, they rejected unpaid obedience. Freedom smells like tar and pitch reek, and tastes like salt spray, but it banks like a co-op. Actually, the code even plans for exit strategies. You can request to be put ashore at the next friendly port if your pockets feel heavy enough or your ghost's too crowded, and the crew votes aye or nay depending on debts and timing. Captured craftsmen, carpenters, surgeons may be offered shares if they join willingly. Hostages turn into ransoms if their families value them correctly. And always, always, the shadow of admiralty courts and execution dock tidies the indecisive. Pirate hunters don't care how fair your ledger was. When storms replace enemies, the articles still rule. Everyone heaves to when the captain roars. Everyone reefs when the bosun snaps. Everyone bails when the carpenter stops joking. Afterward, with hurricanes sulking to leeward and hemp lines groaning like old bones, the quartermaster counts losses like a priest. Canvas, powder, spirits, patience. Shares get adjusted if damage lingers. Poe absorbs the decision as if it were weather. In a world where luck swings like a yardarm, the code steadies the deck. By the time you've lived a month under this floating republic, you stop sneering at rules and start sleeping because of them. The articles take the chaos of Atlantic Caribbean piracy and turn it into something you can wake up inside without flinching. And right when you're comfortable, grog bite warming the throat, gulls and shanties fading, the lookout sings out, "Sail ho!" The captain's voice trims to a knife. The quartermaster closes the chest. Democracy folds itself and waits. Now you'll see whether your beautiful math can outrun a Royal Navy frigate or catch a fat prize before sunset. You learn quickly that the ocean doesn't care about bravado. It cares about angles. If you want real golden age of piracy life instead of campfire myth, you start with canvas and cordage. A pirate ship wins before the first shot by being faster, handier, and meaner to the wind than anything she stalks. That's why sea rovers favor fast rigs, sloops, brigantines, and schooners with fore and aft sails that trim close and tack quick. Lateen where it helps, gaff and jib where they bite. You'll feel the deck lean and see how speed is just good geometry with salt on it. The bosun barks, hemp lines groaning answer, and you realize the ship is a muscle you can train. Sloops are the knives. One mast, big heart, quick temper. You can throw a sloop around like a street dog dodging boots, and you'll still grin into a headwind. Brigantines add a foremast with square tops for downwind sprints, then fore and aft on the main for upwind cunning. They're the compromise pirates adore. Schooners? Sea rovers' darlings in tight channels, low, sly, and fast enough to embarrass a frigate prey in light airs. And that's history again. Pirates didn't just fly skulls. They read sail plans the way gamblers read faces. When the navigator says, "We'll edge her weather," he's betting your fingers can think quicker than their rudder. Trim is a conversation with air you can hear in the rigging. Ease a sheet, and the lateen bellies. Haul, and the fore and aft flattens to a blade. Reefing is humility made useful. Less sail before the squall, not after. The bosun's eye finds wrinkles like a tailor, and your hands learn that an extra inch on a halyard can buy a mile if you give it at the right heartbeat. Lantern glow on wet decks, or sun white on canvas. The rule is the same. Make the wind your accomplice, not your alibi. Get it wrong, and the ship sulks. Get it right, and she purrs. Dead reckoning is the art of being less wrong than the sea expects. No GPS, no mercy. Just logline knots, hourglasses, the sun's height, and a brain that remembers yesterday's current like a grudge. The navigator marks course on a dog-eared chart with salt-scarred thumbs. Then you heave the lead and sing soundings in a chant older than your surname. You'll taste the mud. The lead brings up, and know if a river mouths nearby. Add wind, subtract leeway, multiply by hope. That's the arithmetic of not finding a reef with your bones. Weight and balance are the hidden rigging. Stow powder dry and low, chain and shot where they want murder your heel. Water casks down the spine like a keel within the keel. The carpenter listens to creaking timbers the way a surgeon listens to lungs, tapping frames, sniffing the tar and pitch reek for rot that talks in sweet tones. Shift enough barrels a foot to starboard, and the sloop stops tripping over her own toes. Life aboard a pirate ship turns into a constant quiet Tetris you play, so the sea-roving reality doesn't roll you into a joke. Boatswain's school is pain plus repetition. You learn to go aloft when the world tries to shrug you off. Legs hugging ratlines, hands married to tarred hemp till the kid in you sits down and the sailor stands up. Up there, the Atlantic Caribbean piracy panorama looks friendly. Gulls and shanties, lantern glow at night. But your harness is just grip and nerve. Hands to reef means fingers, not philosophy. A good bosun can read a crew's mood by how a halyard sings. A great one can change it with a whistle and a joke dry as cannon powder. Guns teach their own weather. The gunner times charges to swell and roll, so the muzzle climbs to the line where hull becomes history. You swab between shots because leftover spark is how ships vanish. Other monkeys sprint their relay in a haze of cannon smoke, and you keep your body low because splinters move faster than bullets. Remember, Pirates shoot to stop, not to sculpt. Rudder, lines, and nerve. That's the trinity. Sink a prize, and your shares drown too. Disable her, and your prize crews earn their keep. Careening is the messy half of speed. Find a hidden beach. Anchor fore and aft. Heel the hull till her belly shows like a lazy shark. Then it's scrapers, brushes, new oakum, hot pitch, and prayers that no Spanish guardacosta sneaks a look. Barnacles steal knots. Worms steal futures. You and the swab steal hours back with blistered hands. The tar boils, the sun laughs, gulls heckle, and the quartermaster counts stores like a jealous god. When you relaunch, the first 50 yards feel like forgiveness. Weather is the rival captain you never fully beat. Hurricanes speak in colors. Green water, purple sky, white teeth, and your only answer is seamanship without romance. Reef to honest cloth, lash guns, strike spars if you must, then heave to and let the sloop ride the punch with dignity. Hemp lines groaning are not complaints, they're prayers in rope. After the wall passes and the lanterns relight, you'll smell ozone on salt spray and understand why sea dogs get quiet when the horizon behaves too nicely. Daily routine is what keeps courage from burning out. Watches turn like planets. Meals arrive when the cook wrestles them from a stubborn fire. And grog bite keeps water honest. The surgeon lectures on scurvy, while you chew the sour cure. The carpenter plays therapist to planks. The bosun steals naps from minutes. Between drills you mend sails with a palm and needle, patch nets and polish brass, because the quartermaster believes clean metal wins luck. It's pirate day to day, unglamorous, repetitive, and exactly how you don't be dumb. Chasecraft sharpens all this into a single blade. Spot a distant speck, read her set, square or fore and aft, and choose your approach. If she's a frigate prey with too many teeth, you ghost downwind and pretend to be weather. If she's fat with cargo and slow with pride, you crack on canvas, shave the windward edge, and show just enough flag to let fear do some rowing for you. When the captain says, weather her quarter, you're not just turning, you're telling the wind a joke it's happy to repeat at your speed. And then comes the pivot from seamanship to theatre. Colours up, drum of feet, the call to heave to, or be hammered. And your hands, so recently stitching canvas, grip steel and line. You'll feel the ship vibrate with intention. See the navigator's calm. Hear the bosun's bark change from craft to combat. All this rig and ritual led here. A clean overtake, a clean board, a clean prize. Somewhere beyond the smoke, a Royal Navy frigate patrol or a French cutter might be reading the same sky, which is why tomorrow's lesson has teeth. How you turn speed into spoils before pirate hunters turn names into rope. You spot her the way a cat notices a curtain twitch, just a sliver of canvas on the rim, a masthead pecking the sky. The navigator does a quiet dance of dead reckoning while the boatswain trims the fast rigs to bite a better angle. Sloop or brigantine, you keep your hull light, your wake small, your noise nothing but hemp lines groaning like an old choir. Myth versus history? Pirates didn't always roar, they ghosted. Lantern glow on wet decks gets hooded, and the sea-roving reality becomes a lesson in patience that tastes like salt spray and iron. First decision, what face to wear. False colours aren't cheating, they're strategy with a paint box. A Dutch ensign might calm a Spanish guardacosta, a French tricolour might lull an English brig fat with sugar. The captain reads the wind, the quartermaster reads the prey. You keep a hand ready to run up the black one's masks, stop helping. The gunner checks tampions, the powder monkey kisses luck, and the kid leather of your gloves suddenly feels like theatre costume. Corsairs, freebooters, sea rovers, all prefer brains before broadsides. You close the distance as if asking permission from physics. Ease a sheet, harden the jib, let the lateen belly for a heartbeat, then flatten it like a blade. The bosun's voice is a metronome. Reefing and shaking out happen in a language your muscles learned yesterday. A schooner whispers up. A weather edge, A brigantine uses her square tops like a lure, then turns clever on fore and aft. The prey still thinks she owns the horizon. You know better. You've studied how frigate prey swagger until the wind picks a favorite. Signals matter, because panic is expensive. A gun across the bows is the polite knock, cannon smoke haze drifting like a warning letter. A second shot with chain makes the point legible in rigging. Flags spell. Heave to while the captain's trumpet offers terms. Drop your topsails, lay by, hands before the mast, no heroics. The quartermaster stands by with prize crews, already counting in his head. If they obey, you save powder. If they don't, the bosun's borders limber up, and your heartbeat learns percussion. Prey sometimes runs, and then the hunt becomes arithmetic. You trim for another half knot, move water casks aft to change the balance, and the carpenter listens to creaking timbers like a doctor. The gunner ranges the chasers, leading shots to slap, wake, instead of hope. Privateers turned pirates on the other ship might know your playbook. You answer with better rigging and nerve. Royal Navy frigates play a different game. Longer legs, heavier teeth. So you never mistake a warship's manners for a merchant's pride. The captain watches the horizon for French patrols that smell opportunity. When the moment ripens, intimidation does more work than iron. Colors change, yours to the skull, theirs to white. And you row a boat under the boom with a face that says, contract. Quartermaster reads articles like scripture. Surrender now, keep your lives, keep a chest of clothes, keep your surgeon, keep your dignity. If you don't, keep your stubborn. A boarding party climbs, steel low and voices lower. You smell tar and pitch reek under fear. Hear gulls and shanties from your own rails, carrying across like a rumor of safety. Boarding isn't chaos when the captain is a clock. First over the rail earns the bonus, second secures the powder room, third goes for the wheel. You step through a world of toppled coils, groaning hemp, and men who suddenly realize what prize tastes like. The gunner's mates spike any gun that looks fresh. The boatswain cuts halyards he can re-reeve later. No swagger, no speeches, just hands doing jobs your articles already price. The faster the order returns, the quicker the fear evaporates. Control the talk, control the deck. Quartermaster collects pistols, locks blades in a tub, and lines prisoners along the lee rail, where they can see the sea misbehave. The surgeon checks for wounds because dead men create admiralty courts later. The navigator asks for papers and routes, and quietly notes where lies begin. You keep a weather eye for a last stupid knife. Myth says pirates loved slaughter. History says pirates loved witnesses who could navigate through insurance. Now comes the search that turns timbers into coin. Hatches lift. Cargo lists emerge. The smell of cacao and wet rope mixes with victory. Pieces of 8 chime in canvas bags. Spanish dollars clink in neat stacks. Doubloons appear like small suns. But the real booty, indigo, sugar, tools, medicine, gets tallied with chalk. Contraband in false bottoms, ransoms hinted at by rings, letters naming families that like their captains alive. The quartermaster writes, the cook takes note of barrels that may become morale, and prize crews assemble like a second ship grafted onto yours. Shares aren't counted yet, but morale banks interest early. You pass water all around, Grogbite later, and you tell the prizes crew their options in plain, sea dog English. Sail with honor under us, go ashore at the nearest port, or swear before the mast to vanish from our wake. Press gangs are a navy sin. Pirates recruit by arithmetic. A good carpenter or surgeon gets offers first. A known informer gets rope-fast charity. Respect isn't charity. It's risk management when pirate hunters read faces. Every hunt has a shadow. The other flags in the wind. A boom on the horizon might be a Royal Navy frigate's hello. A slim line might be a Garda Costa guessing right. And the French patrols love to arrive when you're congratulating yourself. You rig quick sail on both hulls, set a rendezvous on the chart, and split before the ocean turns into court. Prize crews know their routes. The main deck returns to ready. You breathe once. That's what passes for celebration. Night refolds the sea, and lantern glow on wet decks turns the day into a story you can tell without choking. The articles will handle shares. The quartermaster will handle spoils. The captain will handle weather and rumour. You, who started the morning as one more pair of hands before the mast, end it with a new sound in your pocket. The promise of coin and the scratch of chalk that says you made today count. And just beyond the rim of light waits the next chapter that school never printed, where you spend plunder how you fence contraband, and which port forgives pirates until a governor changes his sermon. You don't eat gold, you spend it, and that means picking a port that smiles at outlaw mariners without asking for sermons. In the Atlantic Caribbean piracy circuit, a sloop with fast rigs points her bow toward islands that understand freebooters. Nassau when governors look the other way, Tortuga in older buccaneers' tales, backwater cays where a schooner can heave to under mangroves and lower a boat unseen. Lantern glow on wet decks fades into tavern lamps, tar and pitch reek giving way to rum and frying salt fish. The pirate day-to-day becomes business day-to-day. Quiet, coded, and full of hands before the mast pretending to be ordinary sailors for just long enough to make change. Fencing contraband is a dance between nerve and timing. You don't unload cacao by the barrel on a Sunday. You let a factor with a conscience of rubber weigh it behind a warehouse door. Indigo goes to one buyer, tools to another. Medicine vanishes fastest and hushes the loudest mouths. Pieces of 8 and Spanish dollars find scales you trust. Doubloons get tested with a bite nobody admits works, and shares stay theoretical until chalk on a tavern table says otherwise. Myth versus history. Pirates didn't melt treasure chests every Wednesday. Most booty was cargo that turned into silver after 3 conversations and a favor owed. The quartermaster leads the parade of arithmetic with the same calm he wore during boarding. Accounts open like cargo hatches, prize lists, damage offsets, a bonus for first over the rail, compensation for the powder monkey who burned his hand, a slice set aside for careening and spare cordage. Crew crowd close. The clink of coin under the chatter, like gulls and shanties over surf. In a world where Royal Navy frigates call you vermin, the articles make you partners, men of fortune whose fingerprints show up as numbers, not lash marks. You sign for your share, with a mark because ink is easier to defend than a memory after grog. Taverns become offices, and the barkeep is both notary and rumour mill. One room feeds you salted pork that actually tastes like animal. Another back door feeds your cargo to a cart that vanishes toward a merchant who swears he never met you. The oak barters for spices, the carpenter for decent oak, and the surgeon for spirits that are more medicine than story. A boatswain counts coils of hemp while pretending he isn't. A navigator buys new charts with coastlines corrected by dead reckoning and luck. Pirate economy breathes, coin out, supplies in, and just enough left to make a shore night feel like a victory parade. Ports talk in weather and whispers, and you learn to read both. A Spanish guardacosta is said to be sniffing around. You shorten your visit. French patrols hanging off the point. You sail at dawn when the light blinds their glass. Pirate hunters were here last week, bragging about Admiralty courts and execution dock. You trade for fresh water, square your accounts, and let the grog bite wait till you're 30 miles off. Sea roving reality means a good harbour can sour in a tide. The captain and quartermaster carry compasses in their heads as much as in their pockets. Amnesties and pardons drift through like hurricanes you can't quite predict. A governor prints forgiveness if you kiss the hand, pay a fee, and promise to forsake plunder. Your crew debates it over bowls and bruised knuckles. A quartermaster prices the risk of Royal Navy press gangs snapping up, reformed sea dogs, the moment they step outside the fort. Some sign collect back wages that never existed and vanish inland. Some spit, sing a shanty, and head for the sloop at lantern glow. The choice is math plus temper, a floating republic voting on whether tomorrow has a rope in it. With coin in your pouch, temptation looks like a tailor, a knife seller, and 3 card tables with opinions. The articles don't forbid pleasure, they budget it. A new knife that won't sulk in salt spray is investment. A hat that scares gulls is theatre. A night that empties your shares is a conversation with the quartermaster you don't want. Myth says pirates burned coin because they could. History says they bought boots, powder, a better flintlock, and one ridiculous feather to remember a good month by. You keep 2 pieces of 8 stitched under your belt, because taverns tell stories and pockets believe them. Careening eats money as quickly as rum. To keep that sloop quick as a rumour, you buy pitch by the barrel, oakum by the bale, and bribery by the smile. A local pilot points you toward a creek where mangroves hide sins, and you slip in at dusk with lanterns shaded. There's a choreography to it. Anchors out, blocks groaning, hull on her side like a basking whale, swabs scraping barnacles that were stealing your speed in handfuls. Tar bubbles, Sun mocks. The quartermaster counts because speed tomorrow is shares next week. This is life aboard a pirate ship no ballad bothers to sing. Some ports specialize in laundry for consciences, letters that turn stolen sugar into recovered cargo, stamps that convince a neutral flag to forgive your last month's itinerary. Privateers turned pirates know these clerks by first name and invoice number. A captain might buy a paper trail that makes a prize look pre-insured. A navigator might purchase a mistaken log page you can wave at a board patrol. Myth versus history again. Corsairs and sea dogs didn't always fight empires. They often outwrote them with ink that dried quick and lies that fit into a ledger. Threats don't always wear uniforms. Shoreside toughs smell coin and try to turn a quiet alley into a retirement plan with your name on it. A press gang slides down a tavern like spilled beer, looking for hands before the mast to serve the king. Your quartermaster keeps a rotation of sober watchmen even ashore, and the boatswain carries a cosh that speaks fluent policy. The surgeon patches the unlucky and mutters about choices. The cook buys extra loaves because bread buys silence when fists want. Ports are just ships made of stone, creaking, scheming, and full of places a man can vanish. When the last barrel is rolled aboard, and the last debt is scribbled shut, you walk the quay at dusk and feel the decision forming. One more cruise or a farm with fewer storms and more fences. A lantern catches your crew's faces, gunner counting flints, navigator feeling the wind with his eyes, carpenter tapping the rail as if it were a friend's shoulder. Out on the roadstead, your brigantine tugs the anchor like a dog that knows the route by heart. The ocean doesn't beg, it beckons. You shove off on a tide that tastes like possibility, the harbour bell fading behind you, gulls and shanties trading farewell insults. Fast rigs fill, hemp lines groaning into tune, and the captain turns the bow toward lanes where frigate prey strut and merchantmen dream of safe convoys. In the wake, a governor toasts your absence. Ahead, a lookout sharpens his voice for the next. Sail ho! Money bought you powder and a week of soft beds. Seamanship will have to buy you time. And somewhere out there, the weather remembers your name. The pirate hunters sharpen their paperwork, and a rogue storm is already counting to 3. If you really want the pirate day to day, you start in the galley where the cook turns misery into morale. The fire is temperamental, the pots are dented veterans, and everything tastes faintly of tar and pitch reek, because life aboard a pirate ship is basically a moving chimney. Salt beef, hardtack, peas, and whatever contraband the quartermaster requisitioned from the last prize become a menu. Cacao shaved into grog on good nights. Onions like treasure. A lemon slice worshipped like a relic. Myth versus history. No endless roast parrots. More often it's stew that forgives lateness and the biscuit you tap for weevils before you bite. When the lantern glow on wet decks reflects in the ladle, you learn that hot food steals arguments faster than speeches. Water is courage when it's honest, and a riot when it's foul. Casks roll in the hold like sleepy whales, and the carpenter keeps a nose on them because a sour cask can mutiny an entire watch. Grog bite, room watered and rationed, doesn't exist to get everyone drunk. It exists to make the water less murderous, and the crew agree that today isn't unlivable. Quartermaster guards the keg with a priest's temper. Shares are fair, seconds are earned, and a powder monkey caught dipping gets sermon and rope's end together. You'll smell salt spray and sugar in the cup, and understand why sea dogs call it comfort with teeth. The surgeon's corner is where sea-roving reality stops pretending. He's part barber, part gambler, part miracle. When he's sober, sore needle, a chest of jars that look like witchcraft and smell like hope. He'll lance a boil with one hand and lecture scurvy with the other, pressing limes as if they were doubloons you owe yourself. On a bad day, he sews a boarding cut, while cannon smoke haze still clings to your shirt. On a worse day, he prices an arm at so many pieces of 8, the compensation promised in the articles. He's not a genius. He's the reason men of fortune keep returning from stupid odds. Scurvy is the quiet pirate hunter that never needs sails. You chew citrus like prayer, gnaw pickled cabbage, and chase anything green the cook can bully out of a market. The navigator plans landfalls not just for careening, but for gardens, because dead reckoning without teeth is poetry, not seamanship. Privateers turned pirates learn fast that shares don't matter if guns bleed and legs betray you, climbing ratlines. Myth versus history. Pirates were filthy, yes, but they were also practical. A captain who budgets for limes buys himself fewer funerals and more prize crews. Injury pay, those famous shares for limbs, turns compassion into policy. Lose a left hand to a splintered rail, so many Spanish dollars from the chest. Catch a musket ball in the shoulder, a stipend in silver, and first watch off after the surgeon's stitchery. It's grim arithmetic that keeps outlaw mariners loyal when Royal Navy frigates and Admiralty courts offer nothing but rope. The quartermaster recites the ledger like scripture, and the crew who heard bonus for first over the rail at dawn here, you won't starve if the boarders win by night. Fairness isn't kindness here, it's architecture. Cleanliness is luck in disguise. Swabs scour decks till hemplines groaning echo off bright planks, not because the boatswain is a tyrant, but because rot is a slower hurricane. Bilges are pumped by rhythm and insult. Hammocks get aired when gulls and shanties make a chorus overhead. Clothing is rinsed in salt, then sun, then scorn. The cook scolds the mess kit, because yesterday's stew shouldn't become tomorrow's fever. Life aboard a pirate ship is a hygiene negotiation with the ocean, and the ocean hates losing. Superstition stitches the gaps science can't cover. No whistling on deck, you will call a gale. No renaming a sloop unless you drown her old title in rum. Never kill the girl that shadows you, because someone swears it carries a dead sailor's soul. The captain is no fool, but he lets the talismans breathe because morale is a sail you can't see. A little charm at the mast, a coin under the step, a tattoo that promises a swallow will carry you home. Corsairs and freebooters collect protections the way navigators collect stars. When hurricanes mutter on the horizon, even the gunner nods at the charm and checks the lashings again. Diet and discipline keep tempers from inventing mutiny out of boredom. The quartermaster staggers rations so the same watch doesn't always eat the heel of the cask. The cook sneaks a festival on calm days, throwing in a spice pilfered from contraband to make the forecastle cheer. A sloop fed is a sloop that reefs fast, and a brigantine that tastes sugar in the mess will spit thunder with more enthusiasm when a frigate prey shows her stern. You are quite literally what you eat. Powder burns and all. An Edson meets weather in unglamorous places. Sunstroke drops men faster than a French patrol if you forget hats and water. Cold nights steal wits unless blankets are rationed smarter than pride. The surgeon inventory sounds like a quartermaster counts shot. Vinegar for wounds, spirits for pain, and a poultice the cook swears worked on a donkey once and might work on you now. When press gangs flash through a port, you move quiet. When fevers flash through a deck, you move quieter. The difference between a sturdy crew and a story told at execution dock is often a bucket, a ladle, and someone bossy enough to make you drink. Sleep is medicine you can't bottle. Watches rotate so nobody goes feral. Hammocks swing like forgiveness. The lantern glow on wet decks dims on purpose so brains can cool. The boatswain enforces silence after a certain bell. and even the captain's boots remember how to whisper. Gulls and shanties vanish into the night, replaced by creaking timbers and the small, hopeful snores of men who like waking up. You think pirates are wild until you see how religious they are about shut-eye. Stormcare has its own clinic. Before hurricanes, you reef early, lash everything, eat heavy, and drink small. After, you warm hands, chain shirts, and bully the powder dry. The cook produces sweet tea like a magician. The surgeon checks fingers and minds. The carpenter walks the hull, tapping, listening, promising to be offended by any new creak. It's a ritual that tells the crew, you lived, so act like it. Sea dogs don't boast, they maintain. And through it all, the articles tick like a pulse behind the scenes. Shares reward risk, rations smooth envy, limes protect smiles, and superstition paints courage in friendly colors. You can smell the tar and pitch reek, even while the stew smells like mercy. Somewhere, not far off, pirate hunters line up rope and sermons. Somewhere closer, the lookout sharpens his sail. Ho! The next chapter of Staying Alive isn't in the galley at all. It's in the fine line between justice and survival, when a quarrel turns sharp, and the quartermaster's authority meets a knife's opinion. You discover fast that a pirate ship is two things at once, a family and a courtroom with creaking timbers. The articles are the law. The quartermaster is the law's boots. The captain is the hurricane claws. In the real golden age of piracy life, justice isn't a speech. It's a ritual under lantern glow on wet decks where hemp lines groaning make everyone listen. Myth versus history. Less keel-hauling than tavern tales promise more fines, lost shares, and very public shame. The goal isn't cruelty. It's keeping hands before the mast working the same rope tomorrow. Disputes start as whispers and end as assemblies. Maybe a powder monkey swore he saw a bosun's mate skimming sugar, or a swab claims a knife fell into his hammock. The quartermaster calls the crew to witness, reads the article that fits, then lets mouths talk while the captain keeps the weather eye. Life aboard a pirate ship runs on credibility. If your story leaks, the bosun can hear it from the pitch. When the verdict lands, it lands once clean, quick, no gloating, because grudges at sea are storms with names. Punishments scale with risk. Steal from the common chest, and you lose your shares for a cruise or 3. Repeat it, and you're ashore on the next nameless quay with a water skin and your choices. Duck an order in a chase, and your bonus for first over the rail becomes a bedtime story you don't get to tell. Duck again, and you'll meet ropes and justice. For a knife drawn in the dark, the articles might allow a duel at dawn. Pistols or cutlasses, witnessed by the quartermaster and the surgeon with a bucket and a stare. The message is simple. We can survive hurricanes, not you plus your temper. Cowardice is the charge everyone fears most. In a boarding, if you freeze when the captain calls, the ledger freezes for you later. Shares shrink, duties grow, and your hammock suddenly swings where leaks like to find company. It sounds harsh. It is also how freebooters keep courage from outsourcing to rumor. Sea rovers don't need showboats. They need the next man to move when the gunner's sparks fly, and cannon smoke haze turns the world into a guessing game. Murder. That's the article with teeth. If the crew believes you killed a mate outside of battle, the quartermaster doesn't sermonize. He organizes. A vote decides the fate. The rope or the shore decide the method. Marooning is the signature punishment. 1 man, a musket with 1 charge, a bottle, the sky, and time to think. Privateers turned pirates didn't invent it, but they refined it as the sentence that leaves fewer ghosts aboard. Even the hardest sea dogs look at their boots when it's carried out. Captains get judged too. When the wind is peace and the talk is profit, authority belongs to the quartermaster. When chase and fight erupt, the captain gets the wheel and the choir. Abuse either realm and you'll face a recall vote quicker than a squall builds from heat. A bad captain wakes to find the crew, requests his resignation, with courtesy and 5 men holding the stairs. No admiralty courts needed, no execution dock sermon, just a ballot with calloused hands and a new man who can smell weather. The surgeon and cook sit closer to justice than you'd guess. The surgeon's ledger of wounds becomes evidence. This man bled for us twice. Mind your sentences. And the cook's ration books prove who stole what from whom and when the stew started tasting like arithmetic. In pirate day-to-day, paperwork is a life jacket. It turns feelings into facts and keeps the quartermaster from turning into the very tyrant. Everyone ran from on Royal Navy frigates. Rumors of mutiny get treated like sparks near powder. The navigator notices who lingers by the helm at odd hours. The boatswain watches whose knots come loose. By accident, the gunner locks flints where fingers can daydream them. If talk of overthrow surfaces, the quartermaster calls a blunt counsel before the whisper grows teeth. Sometimes the answer is simple. Shares corrected, watches rotated, a man swapped to the prize cruise where his temper can sweat into work. Mutiny isn't always evil. Sometimes it's a note the ship writes to itself. You're out of balance. Alcohol makes saints brave and fools loud. So grog bike gets guarded by clocks. The captain may ration harder before landfall or after a hard prize, and the articles back him. No drunk ladders, no drunk lance, no drunk knives. These are not suggestions. You'll see why the first night a schooner rolls just wrong, and a tipsy man vanishes between swells so fast even gulls and shanties stop mid-syllable. A sober deck is superstition with math behind it. Justice follows you ashore, because ports have long memories. A press gang clubs a mate. The crew decides whether to buy him back, bluff him out, or break the gang's teeth before sunrise. A fence cheats the articles. The quartermaster blacklists him, not with ink, but with a rumor that chases his money like a plague. Corsairs and freebooters manage reputation like sail trim. Every decision angles toward the next deal, the next pardon, the next time a governor pretends not to know your face. Code even covers mercy. A captured carpenter who saved one of yours in the smoke might get a share and a new hammock. A prisoner who fought like a lion but yielded like a gentleman might keep his surgeon and chest. Ransoms are just justice with receipts. Families pay Spanish dollars to keep names out of admiralty courts. Pieces of 8 buy forgiveness in bulk if the quartermaster trusts the ink. Myth versus history again. Pirates weren't fair because they were noble. They were fair because fairness multiplied outcomes. And every now and then the sky writes a verdict none of you can appeal. Hurricanes flatten hierarchy. French patrols appear when you're arguing. Pirate hunters sail with pardons and hangman's knots in the same boat. When the storm clears or the sails turn away, you'll gather under lantern glow on wet decks and hear the quartermaster read numbers more than names. Canvas lost, powder spent, tempers cooled, limes left. Justice at sea isn't a story about heroes. It's a habit that keeps 100 tired men from becoming each other's worst weather. From that habit grows the kind of reputation that buys you docks, fences, and finally legends. The kind with black flags, famous captains, and the kind of last stands that make even execution dock listen before the trap drops. You can feel the law before you see it. Royal Navy frigates ride the horizon like patient wolves. Spanish Guarda Costa lurk along shoals where smugglers breathe, and French patrols sweep sea lanes with the confidence of men paid to be bored until they're not. Pirate hunters don't always fly the flag that matches their paperwork, so myth versus history goes both ways. You learn to read silhouettes. Frigate prey is bluff and proud. Hunters have tidy spars and a way of holding wind that says, practice. Life aboard a pirate ship becomes a chess lesson at 8 knots. Every tack asks whether your next square is water or rope. Avoidance begins long before a chase. In port you buy information the same way you buy powder, quiet, counted, and from 3 sources. A tavern boy hears which cutter cleared the fort. A pilot knows which covert patrol favors after dusk. A board clerk leaks sailing orders for the price of a bottle. The quartermaster keeps these notes as dearly as the chest, because sea roving reality runs on rumor you can verify. You depart on tides the hunters don't expect, show flags they prefer, and slide across channels at hours when lantern glow on wet decks is the only witness. At sea, your first defense is seamanship with manners. Fast rigs? Sloop. Brigantine schooner. Let you hold a weather edge most warships can't without tearing cloth. You shorten sail early so a squall hides you, then shake it out when the wall of rain moves between you and that frigate's glass. The boatswain trims like a surgeon, reefing fore and aft to keep speed without broadcasting panic, while hemp lines groaning turn into reassurance rather than alarm. You don't outrun teeth by wishing. You change the angles until the bite can land. False colors are not magic. They're breathing room. Fly Dutch to calm a Spanish patrol, French to quiet an English convoy, or neutral to disappear in company. Then strike and run when the signal book says the play is over. The captain times the reveal to a gun across the bows or respectful salute, because respectability, performed not felt, buys minutes. If the hunter answers with chain shot and a smile, you learn something valuable the cheap way. He came for you, not conversation. You bear away, quiet the deck, and let canvas argue on your behalf. When a chase starts, the ship becomes a single muscle. Water casks slide by order, not luck. The carpenter dogs hatches and listens to creaking timbers like they're confessing. The gunner clears stern chasers while muttering about range and roll. You heave to only if the captain says the bargain is worth it. Otherwise you ease sheets, take the long curve, and make the hunter sail more sea than you. Good seamanship feels like cheating to men who equate justice with speed. It isn't. It's geography with grit. If they close, intimidation buys what distance can't. You keep your stern guns honest, peppering their foresails to fog their timing, while the quartermaster stages a fake weakness. Men swabbing, a sail in repair, a boat towing a stubborn line. Hunters hate uncertainty more than shot. If you look like trouble with nothing obvious to gain, they sometimes choose a fatter, safer prize. Corsairs, sea dogs, and outlaw mariners have always weaponized boredom in their enemies. Every minute the hunter doubts is a minute your navigator turns into miles. Capture happens, and you prepare for its math. The captain carries a second name and a third story. The papers on the table are edited to make you look like privateers turned pirates only yesterday and by accident. You hide the articles, clean the deck, and let the surgeon turn wounds into narratives about defense, not assault. Admiralty courts care about sequences, not songs. Who fired first, who struck colors, who took a prize under which commission. If your ledger reads contraband, with prices instead of booty, with grins, your odds of a pardon rise noticeably. Courts are theaters with rope in the green room. In town, press gangs prowl, witnesses forget, and clerks find energy you never saw at sea. A magistrate loves a tidy timeline, a governor loves a letter from a merchant, and a jury loves being home by supper. You make yourself small, polite, and full of sentences that can survive being repeated badly. When pardons and amnesties wash through, politics dressed as mercy, you decide with the crew whether to kneel or laugh. Either choice costs something, pride or probability. Execution dock isn't a myth, it's scheduling. Hunters need examples, and the river loves an audience. You can smell tar and pitch reek even there, mixed with the salt of the tide and the iron of chain. Myth says pirates died roaring. History says many died explaining. Which is worse? The thought is enough to keep your hands honest on quiet nights, counting pieces of 8 with a sober eye and sewing $2 Spanish into the waistband for a day you don't plan to meet. The best defense remains intelligence and roots. You learn seasons. Hurricane months that scatter patrols, convoy months that draw them together, careening months when you vanish into mangroves and come out lighter by barnacles and heavier by hope. The navigator's dead reckoning grows teeth when paired with spyglasses on hills and women in markets who remember uniforms better than faces. French patrols break for holy days. Garda Costa captains have cousins in towns where a bottle means an hour's delay at the wrong inlet. You sail the calendar, not just the map. Even victory against hunters comes with invoices. A day spent running burns powder and patience. A brush with a cutter costs rigging you can't replace mid-ocean. Quartermaster recalculates shares. The cook waters grog tighter, and the surgeon checks nerves the way he checks stitches. Pirate day to day means recovering before the next bell rings. Re-rove lines, mend canvas, whisper to the crew that the sky still favors men who can laugh softly. Gull calls replace gun echoes, and for one blessed hour you hear only the ship's breathing. The cycle starts again. A sail on the rim, a rumour in a tavern, a governor with a new sermon about men of fortune, and the old question returns. Do you take the amnesty and become misfit landfolk, or keep the sea and make your luck at the edge of the hunter's chart? Lantern glow on wet decks answers for most of you. This moving town, these fast rigs, this arithmetic of danger and sharers. Either way, dawn is already sanding the horizon, and the boatswain is calling hands before the mast. Somewhere ahead, the fight will be less about running, and more about running the business. Turning prizes into coin without letting the coin turn you soft. Start with the smell. Tar and pitch reek in your nose, salt spray in your teeth, lantern glow on wet decks, telling you this isn't a romance cover. Myth versus history says, no women at sea, but the golden age of piracy life keeps exceptions in its logbook. Anne, Bonnie and Mary read Step Out of Smoke like sea rovers who never asked permission, and a few unnamed hands before the mast did the same, quiet as a reef. Captains cared less about gender than about reefing fast and fighting true. Quartermasters cared mostly about shares. If you could hold a brace, steady a musket, and keep your nerve when cannon smoke haze blinded the deck, you belonged. Why risk disguise? Because the sea-roving reality sometimes offered more oxygen than land. Press gangs and tight-laced towns turned futures into cages. A sloop's deck turned them into angles and wind. Life aboard a pirate ship meant pay in pieces of 8, a vote on big choices, and a code that punished bullies quicker than most shore courts. You weren't a mascot. You were another back for the boatswain to bark at, and another hand for the gunner to trust. And if a captain took you on, he wasn't courting scandal. He was hiring competence under a hat. Disguise wasn't magic. It was craft. You cut your hair, flattened your silhouette, learned to spit sailor and not stage, and let calluses testify louder than a story. Boatswain drills don't care how you sound. They care whether you can go aloft in a squall and tie reef points when hempline's groaning sound like old bones. The cook didn't flirt. He fed you if you pulled your weight. The surgeon stitched you if a splinter wrote its name in your ribs. In the quartermaster's ledger, you were shares first, gossip never, and that math saved more than one life. Anne Bonny joined Calico Jack Rackham's sloop like a spark that decided not to go out. Mary read, soldier, sailor, survivor, stood beside her when frigate prey tested everyone's nerve. In the fight off Jamaica, witnesses swore the fiercest voices belonged to 2 brisk young fellows, which is how history files courage when it can't do paperwork. Articles paid them in doubloons and respect, because the bonus for first over the rail doesn't ask questions it can't carry. When pirate hunters finally closed the net, the Admiralty courts learned what the crew already knew. Those fellows had earned their shares. Rolls went pink or blue. They were practical. On a chase, a disguised woman might run powder, like a born powder monkey, keep time with the gunner's bark, and swab between shots, so no ember turned the deck into a rumour. In a calm, she might help the navigator with dead reckoning, taking noon sights while gulls and shanties mocked the empty horizon. Prize crews needed steady nerve more than beard. A schooner slipped into a mangrove creek doesn't ask who's steering, just whether the tiller feels honest. Corsairs, freebooters, men of fortune, call them what you like, they loved results. What about the code? Articles that banned quarrels after dark and knives at cards were engendered. They were survival. Abuse earned sentences no one envied. Lost shares, rope's end persuasion, or a walk ashore on a hostile quay with a skin of water, and the weather for company. Quartermaster who protected the least powerful hand wasn't soft. He was protecting the whole ship from rotting inside. When discipline works, a crew sleeps. When it doesn't, execution dock stops being an abstract noun. Women who proved themselves found the shield of policy, not chivalry. Ashore, the mask could be a tool. In markets from New Providence to Port Royal, a woman dropped the Sailor Act and gathered intelligence in a language patrols underestimated. Which cutter cleared the fort at dawn? Which French patrols were drinking themselves slow? Which factor would fence cacao at a Christian price? A hat pin and a question bought what a cutlass couldn't. Fencing contraband always needed ears. Sometimes the sharpest ones wore bonnets at noon and watch caps by dusk. Romance happened, sure, but on a clock and under the article's ceiling. Courtship at Cutlass Point is a folk song, not policy. Captains who allowed consorts aboard usually paid for it with split focus, and pirate hunters cheered the distraction. The better practice was clear. No passengers under sail, no favors in the ledger, no fights for the cook's bench. Ransoms, not romances, paid the yard bills. When love did strike, it asked the quartermaster's leave like any other risky cargo. Superstition had opinions, and pirates negotiated with them rather than knuckling under. Some hands swore women aboard meant storms. Others swore women aboard meant luck, because the ship seemed to try harder. Practical captains planted a coin under the mast step, nodded to the charm tied to the shrouds, and told the boatswain to double-check the lashings. Hurricanes don't read pamphlets. They read seamanship. Whoever could reef quickest, Mary, Anne, or the man next to them, won the argument. Captives complicated everything. Pirate day-to-day leaned on ransoms that turned names into numbers, and women passengers could bring either peace or panic if fools on either side forgot the articles. Smart captains wrote terms like contracts, safe conduct, in exchange for compliance, surgeon retained, property inventoried and receipted. It wasn't virtue signaling. It was risk management when Admiralty courts tallied. Outrage, faster than plunder. A clean reputation scared prey into surrender and kept governors grudgingly pragmatic. Pamphleteers took it from there, painting sirens and scandal because pages sell better than ledgers. Walking the plank. Theatre, not custom. A black spot. Novel, not notebook. The real story is quieter. A steady hand on a brace, a pistol fired when it counted, a share counted by lantern glow on wet decks. Women under the black flag weren't mascots. They were evidence that sea roving reality valued nerve, not narrative. And the best narratives, naturally, raided that truth for sparkle. By the time the wind shifts and the lookout squints, the lesson has already settled. Identity mattered less than ability when Royal Navy frigates, Spanish Guardacosta, and French patrols prowled the lanes. The next sail might be a prize, a pardon ship with amnesties aboard, or a hunter with your name spelled right. Either way, the deck demands the same thing it asked of Anne and Mary. Reef fast, move true, and let the quartermaster's chalk do the talking. Ahead lies the part few ballads get right. Endings, some rich, some quiet, some at court under a black tide, and a grey sky where sentences feel heavier than chains. You can outsail a merchant and outfight a coaster, but the cheapest victory is the one you never have to swing for. Pirates in the Golden Age understood branding long before the word existed. Call it the theatre of terror. Under lantern glow on wet decks, captains rehearsed personas the way actors rehearse lines, because fear makes even a stout crew heave to without wasting powder. Versus history? The Skull and Bones wasn't just spooky. It was a contract that said, surrender now and keep your skin. Life aboard a pirate ship ran on tactics that turned reputation into a weapon sharper than any cutlass. Flags were shorthand, not decoration. False colors helped you approach. True colors, your Jolly Roger, told the end of the story in one breath. Calico Jack flew crossed cutlasses. Bartholomew Roberts preferred a skeleton hourglass. Others stitched bleeding hearts or an hour to live. Each banner promised terms. Strike your topsails, hands before the mast, prize crews aboard. And you go home breathing. A black flag said, mercy, if quick, while red warned, no quarter, if they made you earn it. In sea-roving reality, cloth moved cargo faster than cannon ever did. Blackbeard understood stagecraft like a city theatre. He braided slow matches into his beard so cannon smoke haze followed him even when the guns were quiet. Sulphur, stinging eyes, sparks crawling like devils, a human storm. Add tar and pitch reek, pistols across a bandolier, and a stare that read your will better than your face. Now you see why Frigate Prey sometimes chose prayer over resistance. He wasn't a demon. He was a professional psychologist who knew that grog-fueled stories travel faster than sloops. Outlaw mariners learn from that. Make a legend, and let it sail ahead of you. The quartermaster, part CFO, part ringmaster, curated the crew's image as carefully as he counted pieces of 8. He made sure prisoners saw discipline, not froth. Weapons stacked. Powder sealed. No random cruelty. Because the survivors would testify in markets and admiralty courts that you offered terms. Pirate hunters and Spanish Guarda Costa listened for patterns. Merchants listened for chances to live. If your brand was fair when obeyed, your next prize would heave to before your first warning shot. Shares rose on rumor as surely as on ransoms. Sound mattered. Drums, fifes, and the synchronized thunder of boots on planks turned boarding into a rehearsed panic machine. Gulls and shanties fell silent. Then your chant hit like surf. The boatswain timed the rhythm with hemp lines groaning as grapnels flew. Music, menace, and muscle memory in a single wall of noise. Even the cook played his part, sending a curl of smoke from the galley, so your ship looked bigger than it was. Life aboard a pirate ship was choreography. You just called it orders. Trophies became props and press releases. A captured pennant on the stern, a cannon mounted where it could be seen, a gilded figurehead stolen from a frigate prey. Every scrap told a story to the next lookout. You didn't flaunt to brag, you flaunted to sell the promise. Surrender fast, keep your surgeon, keep a chest of clothes, keep your breath. Prize crews carried this theater aboard the Victim, moving with calm that said, "We've done this 100 times. Panic hates competent villains." Words were weapons with better range than muskets. Letters passed to governors explained, "You were privateers turned pirates," only because a war ended awkwardly. Notes to merchants promised safe passage if they signaled and obeyed. Handbills in ports accused pirate hunters of cruelty worse than yours. Myth versus history again. Corsairs and sea dogs didn't just fight states. They outwrote them. A clean, legible promise, witnessed and sealed, could make a convoy captain sleep softer than 6 extra guns. Contraband moves quickest under a reputation that behaves. Not all terror wore masks. Some wore math. The bonus for first over the rail didn't just buy bravery. It advertised inevitability. The minute your crew hit their ladder drills, the praise captain weighed his crew's nerves against your efficiency. If he'd heard your quartermaster pays wounded men in Spanish dollars and forbids useless slaughter, he knew you went drunkards gambling on murder. Heave to now, or gamble your owner's cargo against a brand that wins. The ledger beat the cutlass more often than ballads admit. Literature later added ghosts the sea never met. The black spot is Stevenson's, not the quartermaster's. Walking the plank is circus, not courtroom. Real terror was quieter. The creak of a hatch you shouldn't open, the thud of boots above while you counted your chances. The calm of a captain who'd already measured your resolve. Admiralty courts and execution dock handled spectacle. Pirates handled persuasion. History's less cinematic, more effective, the kind you feel in your molars. Fear also kept crews in line without turning decks into gallows. Superstition, coins under mast steps, tattoos to bribe the sea, stitched with incentives, shares, rations, injury pay, meant justice rarely needed theatre. The surgeon's clean saw and the cook's hot stew were part of the brand inside the rail. We are dangerous to enemies and decent to our own. Pirate day-to-day thrives when the shiver happens outside, not within. Your best legend is the one your crew believes first. Women in this world understood theatre too, and sometimes wrote the script. Anne Bonny and Mary Red didn't haunt as sirens. They fought as hands before the mast, disguising when they had to, discarding disguise when it gave them reach. Their presence bent gendered expectations into weapons, surprise, audacity, and a refusal to be props in someone else's play. Ports turned their names into headlines. Crews turned them into proof that courage doesn't ask permission. Myth will embroider. History already has teeth. In the end, terror was logistics in costume. Flags, footsteps, smoke, and stories, each designed to make the next ship strike early so you spent less powder and collected more prize. That's how sea rovers survived the hunter's net, how freebooters paid for careening, and how men of fortune kept the grog bite civilized. And when the theatre lights dimmed, and the curtain of horizon rose again, the stage sometimes held a different cast entirely. Women under the black flag, courtship at Cutlass Point, and the rare days when a masquerade fooled the sea as well as the enemy. You don't plan an ending at sea. The sea plans it for you. Some pirates step off with pockets heavy and names light, others with names famous and pockets empty, and a few with both burdens clanking together. Royal Navy frigates don't care about your legend. They care about their orders, and the Spanish Guarda Costa and French patrols keep their own ledgers. You can smell the tar and pitch reek even in dreams when you've been running too long. Golden age of piracy life teaches one truth early. Every prize day secretly writes a last day somewhere in its tally. The softest ending wears a governor's seal. Pardons and amnesties roll through ports like good weather, conditional, political, and never as generous as the sermon sounds. The quartermaster reads the clause where privateers turned pirates may kneel and leave with a clean page if they surrender within weeks and name former captains. You vote in the lantern glow on wet decks, grog bite kept tight so nobody mistakes courage for intoxication. Some hands before the mast sign step ashore and vanish inland with a new trade. Others spit, grin, and head back fast rigs. A clever ending is paperwork with a pulse. Sea rovers slide toward respectability behind a merchant's counter, laundering contraband into cargo, prizes into salvage, and rough maps into pilotage. The navigator becomes a coastal guide, the carpenter owns a yard, the surgeon hangs a neat brass plate. In taverns, rumors say these men still smell of cannon smoke haze when the rain hits, but myth versus history is kind. Here, money makes excellent soap. You keep a few Spanish dollars stitched under a belt, because habits live longer than flags. Quiet retirement, rare as a windless week, hides in corners. Small farms, a boat that fishes more than it hunts, a life where gulls and shanties give way to church bells. Shares turn into fences, doubloons turn into roofs. A bonus for first over the rail becomes a story told at dusk to someone who never quite believes you. It's not glorious, it's survivable. The sea roving reality fades into the clink of teaspoons and the creak of a porch. Yet some nights you still wake to hemp lines, groaning, and reach for a brace that isn't there. Capture changes the air you breathe. Pirate hunters bored with lists and stern faces, you hide the articles, wipe the deck, and hope the surgeon can recite a defensive poem about who fired first. The captain picks a new name, and a harmless biography. The quartermaster becomes a steward who knows nothing about shares. Admiralty courts like timelines, neat as a fresh coil of line. If your letters look like privateering commissions that grew confused after the war, you might trade the noose for a cell. Trials are theatre, with accounts payable. Clerks narrate, witnesses contradict, and you stand where the floor tilts even on land. Your counsel, if your coin stretches, args myth versus history on your behalf. Freebooters offered mercy, spared surgeons, paid injury shares, forbade useless slaughter. A prosecutor points at pieces of 8 like their skulls. A jury nods when it hears men of fortune, and scowls when it hears contraband. You learn that the law has its own sea, and you're not its navigator. Execution dock lurks like a headland with your name on it. On the morning you smell river salt, wet rope, and fear polished to a shine. You hear gulls that don't care about last words. The walk is longer than a main deck and quieter than a night watch before a gale. Some curse, some pray, some explain until the trap answers back. Lantern glow on wet decks becomes lantern glow on faces you don't know, and even the bravest sea dog learns the sound of a city holding its breath. Before that walk, some choose ink over rope. Turning king's evidence buys life at the price of sleeplessness. You point at captains, quartermasters, fencers, even the surgeon who stitched your luck back together. Shares in this economy are paid in rumors and guarded doors, not pieces of 8. The men you name become stories for other courts, their endings folded into yours. Outlaw mariners understand arithmetic. This math tastes like rust. Marooning is the ocean's verdict, delivered by your own. No Admiralty courts, no press gangs, just a K, a skin of water, a musket with one charge, and a horizon that pretends not to be interested. The articles drag justice here because a ship can't carry a fever inside its crew without dying of it. You sit on hot sand, hear the surf argue with itself, and discover that creaking timbers were a kinder lullaby than you knew. Some survive. Most become rumors that gulls carry and shanties borrow. Every path home, even the rope, measures the crew you kept. A captain who paid shares honest is mourned. One who shaved the math is forgotten by lunchtime. Quartermasters remembered for fairness get their names muttered over grog in a dozen ports. Bullies are erased with a shrug. Your navigator leaves a map nobody admits to owning. Your cook leaves a recipe someone misremembers perfectly. Life aboard a pirate ship writes its epitaph in habits, not epitaphs. And then there's the legend, which belongs to everyone else. Pamphlets and ballads sand off the splinters, tuck in the sails, and invent walking the plank to sell copies. Pieces of 8 become dragons' hordes. Corsairs turn into sea dogs with spotless coats. You become a lesson for children, a sermon for governors, a toast for men with fewer risks to take. Myth versus history plays its favorite game, trading places, while the real sea keeps breathing behind the stage. However it ends, pardon ink, porch light, or a black tide morning, you carried a fact that doesn't die. Pirates were laborers with nerve who built floating republics out of bargains and rope. The sea writes harshly, but it writes fair when you respect its grammar. Seamanship, discipline, speed, and luck. And if you listen closely as the tide turns, you'll hear the next chapter rustling in the mangroves. Not endings at all, but afterlives. Wreck maps. Buried rumors, and how treasure hunting became a second stranger theater where the golden age refuses to sink quietly. The day after a hanging or a pardon is when the real ghost work begins. Merchants whisper about wrecks as if the sea kept a ledger you could borrow, and taverns sell directions the way apothecaries sell hope. You learn that treasure is a season, not a noun. Storms scatter frigate prey and homebound galleons into bite-sized rumors. Myth versus history turns slippery. Pirates didn't bury much, the ocean did, by flipping hulls onto sandbars and filing coins under dunes. You, who once chased sails, start chasing tides, reading lantern glow on wet decks now as a clue, not a comfort. The sea keeps secrets in salt. You trade salt for stories. Wreck maps are born from dead reckoning, plus vanity. A navigator who survives a hurricane sketches shoals and bearings before the grog bite erases details, marking where the sea sounded like a cathedral. A quartermaster adds, notes in the margin. Cargo type, likely shares, whether prize crews went missing, or merely unlucky. Hands before the mast gossip names of creeks, where careening once happened, and coins later appeared in fishermen's nets. You copy these fragments like a monk, then fold them into oilskin, as if the paper itself could drown. Maps don't point to gold, they point to work. Coastal people become your new fleet. Wreckers with quick eyes and faster boats read weather better than any Admiralty clerk. Pilots know which bar shifts after each squall. Lighthouse keepers hear cannon bangs, carried miles by night air. You pay in Spanish dollars because pieces of 8 travel farther than promises. A widow with a skiff can chart an inlet in one tide. A boy hauling nets can recite more mast names than a full Royal Navy frigate muster. Sea roving reality now speaks through shore tongues. You listen. Salvage is seamanship in slow motion. You sound with poles and rope, mark the ground with stakes, and heave to in your head while the tide does the heavy lifting. Divers go down with lungfuls of courage and a line that tells their story in tugs. 1 for slack, 2 for haul, frantic for I found something or I'm becoming something found. The tar and pitch reek returns when you reburn planks to shore a skiff. Cannons rise like sulking whales and coins like small suns. No broadside cheers you, only gulls and shanties practicing your eulogy too early. Most treasure isn't coin, it's cargo that didn't rot. Indigo cakes stubborn as bricks, cacao in clotted bales, sugar turned to amber lumps that still buy meals, iron bars that pay in tools more than in sparkle. Doubloons happen. Oh, they do. But the ledger fills faster with contraband that looks like work. You sort spoils by nose first, salt, spice, death, then by weight, then by fences. You trust from your old ports and fences. You avoid because execution dock taught you their handwriting. Booty becomes salvage, and your conscience grows a lawyer. The law arrives even on empty beaches. Admiralty courts love salvage claims written in tidy nouns. Location, depth, witnesses, division. Pirate hunters may be gone, but their cousins wear wigs and carry pens sharper than cutlasses. A smart outlaw mariner hires a respectable partner. Privateers turned salvers and files the papers before the rumor sails faster than you do. Myth versus history. Quicker with ink wins more than quicker with oars. Shares get notarized. Your soul pretends to enjoy respectability for one afternoon. Stories about X-marks get louder the longer you ignore them. Burying plunder was a rare emergency. Pursuit near, crew thin, mangroves friendly. And most caches return to the sea by flood, fire ant, or forgetfulness. Yet ballads sell better than ledgers, so the world insists on chests beneath palms. You learn to translate. EXX means a reef line, a compass error, and someone who drank at noon. A real map whispers with data, soundings, currents, the angle of a headland at dawn, not with skulls. You chase the whisper, not the drawing. Superstition rides shotgun even now. A coin under the mast-step for luck, a knot tied thrice before a dawn launch, a promise to share with widows if the sea shares with you. Call it hedge or prayer. The cook brings oranges like talismans. The surgeon pockets a tiny cross because sand buries air faster than water does. You don't laugh at charms. You audit them. Hurricanes have been quit studying you just because you change careers. Reefing a sail and crossing yourself are both forms of seamanship. Ethics get negotiated with each tide. If a wreck holds bones, you inventory gently and tell the nearest priest or magistrate because reputations outlive storms. If a survivor crawls from the surf with a captain's ring and a claim, you weigh the ring and the man separately. Respectability politics, yes, even here, decides whether your next sail goes smoothly or sends you into the arms of a French patrol that suddenly loves paperwork. You were once a man of fortune. Now you are a man of consequences. A quartermaster's ghost sits on your shoulder and reads a spit out loud. The best tool remains patience disguised as routine. You log wind and tide heights, you pace beaches at new moons, you drag grapnels like you're combing a giant's hair. Lantern glow on wet decks becomes lantern glow through green water, as you lower a glass box to look for hull shadows on sand. When a Spanish guardacosta shells a rumor, 2 coves over, you smile at your caution. Pirate day-to-day taught you this. Schedule beats appetite, and appetite survives longer when it keeps a schedule. Paydays come oddly here. 1 week yields a cannon sold to a planter for sugar. Another, a scatter of coins that sound like rain on a table. Once in a long while, a chest that truly exists, hinged and stubborn, all disbelief ending the moment wood sized. Shares get counted under the same moon that once saw you divide plunder, and the old phrases return. Bonus for first over the rail mutates into a bonus for first to the find. Injury pay still matters because a broken foot on a reef feels a lot like a musket ball when the weather changes. You don't swagger, you buy rope. The afterlife of piracy is industry in a better coat. Sea dogs become sea accountants, corsairs become coastal cartographers, freebooters become wreckers licensed by Crown, and the ocean, amused, keeps burying and revealing on a timetable that ignores all human nouns. You'll carry home a pocket of Spanish dollars and a mind quieter than it used to be. Then a new rumor will blow in like weather. Somewhere beyond that headland, a convoy once broke in a black squall, a prize crew never arrived, and the tale grew teeth. And if you follow that teeth-bearing tale a little farther, you'll find the last theatre of the age, museums, myths, and the modern divers who chase your shadows with air on their backs and your maps in their hand. You step from salt spray and gulls and shanties into a gallery where the air smells faintly of tar and pitch reek by design. Dive lights replace lantern glow on wet decks as curators stage the golden age of piracy life. Beneath glass letting you stand dry, while sea roving reality keeps dripping. A sloop's bronze bell sits beside an encrusted pistol, and suddenly you can hear hemp lines groaning even though the room is carpeted. Myth versus history isn't a slogan here, it's the itinerary. You're still one of the hands before the mast. Only now your watch is to notice what the sea returned and what stories embalmed. Modern wreck hunters are navigators with air on their backs and spreadsheets for charts. Your dead reckoning becomes sonar sweeps. Your lead lines' mud readings become magnetometer spikes that whisper iron guns below. Whole shadows reveal themselves. A low, fast schooner here. A bluff brigantine there. Sometimes a sloop collapsed like a tired lung. Reefing once saved masts. Now rough pilots heave to over coordinates and fly cameras through cannon smoke haze made of silt. The boatswain bosun of yesterday would nod at a thruster joystick. It still answers the same wind. What rises isn't just booty, it's biography. Pieces of 8, Spanish dollars, and the occasional doubloon clatter into trays. Yes, but more often it's indigo cakes, cacao concretions, barrel hoops, and a surgeon's. Kit shy one sawtooth. A cook's pot with scorch marks tells you where grog bite met stew. A carpenter's adze still remembers knuckles. A gunner's worm and sponge shrink an entire broadside into 2 tools. Prize becomes prize cruise becomes please keep humidity at 55%. Contraband transformed into conservation. Spoils make better sense when a lab report sits where a ledger used to. Museums fix what pamphlets broke. They park walking the plank and the black spot on the same shelf as mermaids and polite sea monsters, then walk you toward the real articles, shares, rules, injury pay, that made life aboard a pirate ship more co-op than chaos. You read a quartermaster's chalk writ neat as a sermon. Bonus for first over the rail, fines for knives at cards, compensation for lost limbs. Myth makes pirates monsters or saints. Vitrines make them laborers with risky pensions and excellent marketing. Replica decks teach with splinters. You lay a hand on creaking timbers, feel a teen and other fore and aft sails snap to a stage breeze, and practice reefing while a costumed bosun times you. Heave to, the interpreter says, and the rig answers with obedient cloth, just as a real sloop would. A docent pours safe, grog and laughs when your face makes the same shape as a powder monkey's first sip. The point isn't cosplay, it's muscle memory, yours. Law didn't sync with the wrecks. Salvage claims head to modern admiralty courts where finders and archaeologists parry like captain and quartermaster, arguing over a careening beach. UNESCO rules speak for graves, insurance archives speak for cargo. Governors still write pardons and amnesties, only now they're permits and cultural heritage exemptions. Privateers turned pirates find their mirror in treasure hunters turned scholars when grants replace ransoms and reports replace tavern boasts. Paper still decides who gets paid. The brand endures because it learned to edit. Exhibits show flags. Calico Jack's crossed cutlasses, Robert's hourglass. Beside broadsheets screaming about freebooters and corsairs, you watch a real, unpacked Blackbeard stagecraft. Slow matches hissing, beard smoking, fear launched like a boarding grapnel. Then the curator cuts to the ledger again. Prize crews, shares, contraband lists, as if to say, the captain performed, the quartermaster delivered. Terror won the day, but accounting kept the ship. Port towns remember in accents, not footnotes. In Nassau, Port Royal, and along Carolina Sounds, elders talk about wreckers outrunning French patrols, and Guarda-Costa skiffs when hurricanes overturn the sea's pockets. Family names still carry press gangs in their stories and pardons in their prayer books. Festivals sell you pieces of eight, chocolate, and teach children knots that once kept ransoms breathing. You catch that familiar rhythm. Outlaw mariners recast as local ancestors who knew a thing or two about weather and wages. Science gives the sea a diary. Dendrochronology dates planks from Baltic forests. Isotopes in lead shot link cargoes to Spanish foundries. Residues inside barrels insist that your grog was sometimes wine and your water sometimes a rumor. Hurricanes become accidental curators, scouring sand off a frigate prey one year and burying a brigantine the next. Careening beaches are mapped by pollen as much as by posts. Your old dead reckoning grins. The lab just speaks it more precisely. Hands-on isn't a marketing line, it's pedagogy. Kids run powder monkey relays between mock guns while a gunner counts cadence. Parents try the lead line chant and discover their lungs don't hold as long as hope. A navigator demonstrates noon sight with a plastic sextant and gets the same cheer a clean latitude used to get. A boatswain teaches reef points and reminds the room that hemp burns. A cook passes a hardtack biscuit and asks everyone to knock first. Pirate day-to-day repackaged as muscle lessons. Aeonics gets its due in wall text that reads like a captain's brief. Convoys rose because Royal Navy frigates couldn't be everywhere. Insurance markets fattened because sea rovers made math interesting. Pirate hunters multiplied with each petition from merchants who called spoils losses and losses election. You finally see how shares changed behavior, how ransoms greased diplomacy, how press gangs fed both navies and pirate decks with equal indifference. The system wasn't romantic. It was ravenous, and you were its quick learners. And when you step back out into real wind, the gulls sound exactly the same. The sea roving reality you tasted in vitrines follows you to the pier. Salt, tar, rope, the hush before a squall. You find yourself humming a work rhythm and reading rig like a second language. Which is perfect because the next piece of this life isn't glassed in at all. It's the soundtrack and slang that held crews together. The calls, the shanties, the curses that timed haul and hope, and the code switching that could buy you a port or save you from a court. You learn quickly that a ship runs on language as surely as it runs on wind. The soundtrack of golden age of piracy life isn't just gulls and shanties. It's the clipped orders that turn panic into choreography. Hands before the mast wakes muscle memory. Heave to turns a chase into a truce. Reef down makes a squall pay rent. Board a sloop or brigantine with fast rigs. The boatswain's whistle is punctuation and the bosun himself is grammar. Miss a note and hempline's groaning turn into complaints. Hit it and creaking timbers purr like a cat that knows you've earned it. Life aboard a pirate ship is a language class where wrong answers get you wet. Auntie's a work math you can sing. A capstan song keeps the beat while you weigh anchor. A halyard call times each heave so the latine or other fore and aft sails bite together instead of arguing. The cook hums low over the galley fire, and somehow the grog bite tastes steadier. The gunner hums louder when the swell is mean, and his crew swab and ram on a rhythm that refuses misfires. Myth versus history. Pirates didn't serenade the moon every night. They used music like a measuring tape. You count in choruses because your hands are busy, and the ocean loves to interrupt. Orders shrink in battle because syllables are time. Boarders ready! Needs no flourish. Grapnels! Ends debate! Chain to the fore! Tells the chasers to scalp rigging, not pride. Cannon smoke haze. Swallows fancy words anyway, so the captain talks in verbs, and the quartermaster translates them into motion. The navigator's dead reckoning becomes north by west, a kick of leeway, which your feet already understand. A gunner uses the oldest phrase in the book, now. And it means the same thing in every language you've ever heard on a wet deck. Nicknames keep tempers alive without starting fires. Powder monkey is not an insult. It's respect for small legs that outrun explosions. Swabs isn't a slur. It's the gang that keeps rot from becoming a passenger. Sea rovers, freebooters, men of fortune. Those labels are marketing you use on shore when fences ask you who you are. On deck, identity is job, plus reliability. Quartermaster will call you steady, like it's a rank. The boatswain will call you lad, until you mess up. Then your full name lands like a rope's end. Signals talk when voices can't. Flags say heave to, or stand by for prize crews across the last safe distance. A gun across the bows is punctuation even a stubborn merchant can pass. False colors speak in accents. Dutch to soothe a Spanish guardacosta, French to calm an English convoy, until the reveal. Lantern glow on wet decks becomes Morse for the sleepless. 1 for course, 2 for danger, 3 for no noise, fast hands. You don't need poetry when the sea is already dramatic. Jargon isn't decoration. It's safety. Aloft means your next step decides your next year. Lee isn't a word, it's a warning. Belay is stop before gravity writes your apology. Carpenters. Shay's working means the hull is complaining. The surgeon's hold still means pain wants a word. The navigator's sound again means your map is about to become autobiography. Even the cook's hot plate is a sermon when the deck lurches. In pirate day-to-day, vocabulary is PPE. Ice. Humor keeps the air breathable. Dry as hardtack and twice as necessary, it turns fear into something your hands can hold. The bosun's joke right before reefing reminds you not to lock your knees. The surgeon's quip before the needle keeps you from counting the wrong things. The captain's one-liner after a near miss tells the Royal Navy frigates, at least in your head, that you're still writing the script. Laughing isn't denial. It's ballast. It keeps the bow from digging when worry tries to bury it. Courtesies survive, even when laws don't. A captured captain gets a sir if he struck early. A surgeon keeps his kit, and therefore his dignity. The navigator is asked questions, not bullied for answers. That language travels farther than your flag, and it arrives in admiralty courts when witnesses recall your tone. Pirate hunters listen for cruelty, like dogs for thunder. If your words read fair, ports listen. If they read cheap, ports close. Ashore, talk becomes camouflage. In Nassau or Port Royal, a freebooter becomes mariner. Booty turns to spoils, spoils to salvage, and salvage to shares, while Spanish dollars and pieces of 8 move like rumors. The quartermaster calls it bookkeeping. Fences call it market realities. You call it not going to execution, Doc. Press gangs hear accents better than they hear explanations. So the crew practices sounding from here long enough to buy a drink and a coil of decent hemp. Superstition speaks up when science runs out of nouns. Don't whistle up a wind. Don't rename a schooner without drowning the old name in rum. Do drop a coin under the mast step, so the sea feels paid. Even the navigator, all numbers and noon sights will touch that coin when hurricanes bruise the horizon. The language of luck, small, muttered, stubborn, threads through the more practical talk of heave to and reefing. You don't argue with a charm if it makes the hands move a hair quicker. Insults have rules, or they become knives. Lazy is for canvas, not mates. Blind is for fog, not lookouts. And complaint goes to the quartermaster, where words can be weighed, not to the night air, where they become weather. The articles protect your mouth from your temper, and your future from your mouth. Nothing ruins shares like a sentence you can't unsay when French patrols or Garda Costa captains are listening from the next stable. And in the quiet after watch, language turns from tool to lullaby. A low shanty, a whispered story about buccaneers who smelled contraband on the wind, a vow between hammocks to split any doubloons found in the seam. These sounds stitch the crew together after the day phrased them. Tomorrow those same voices will call haul away and let go and hard to starboard, and you'll move like one animal because you rehearsed in talk, which is useful because the next thing your tongue must do is harder than song or slang. Talk a ship into surrender, or talk yourself through the hiss and flash of a boarding where every word is a footstep towards someone else's deck. You don't jump for glory, you jump for control. A boarding is just project management with cannon smoke haze and bad lighting, and your job is to turn another man's workplace into yours before his fear remembers it has options. Captain handles timing and angle. The quartermaster handles terms and inventory. You handle the 3 feet of space in front of your boots. You've talked the prey as far as words can carry. Now you finish the sentence with presence. Feel the salt spray in your lungs, the tar and pitch reek in your nose, and the deck flexing under you like a thought deciding whether to break. Preparation begins long before grapnels fly. The boatswain has you reefing down to fighting cloth, trimming those fast rigs so the sloop or brigantine holds speed without making a mess of your landing. The navigator wears dead reckoning like a second face, measuring drift so your bow kisses their quarter, not their teeth. The gunner loads chain for rigging and round for bravery, swabbing between shots so a leftover spark doesn't promote you to ghost. The carpenter dogs hatches, braces bulkheads, and listens to creaking timbers for lies. The surgeon opens his chest with the calm of bad news you can survive. You sell the moment before you spend it. Flags talk. Your black promises mercy if quick, their white begs you to keep your word, and a single gun across the bows writes the punctuation mark both crews can read. Heave to carries over water like a judge's hand. If they comply, prize crews and paperwork do the rest. If they don't, the captain chooses angle while the quartermaster counts minutes like money. You breathe slow, flex fingers, and remind your nerves that the bonus for first over the rail is not a dare so much as a plan. Grapnels don't fly until the wind agrees. The boatswain times the throw to the roll, hemp lines groaning like an old choir as hooks bite rail and rig. Swabs stand by to snub and belay, turning a moving world into a bridge. Powder monkeys run, small and vital, feeding the chasers one last bite to keep their deck honest while yours closes. Gulls and shanties vanish into a tunnel of noise that's all rope creak and men's breath. You learn to love that sound because it means the ocean hasn't stolen the script yet. First across isn't madness, it's choreography. You aim for open planks, not hero portraits, and you keep steel low because tripping on a cutlass is a stupid epitaph. The captain's voice becomes a compass you can hear even when your eyes sting. The quartermaster's orders shrink to verbs you trust. Wheel, powder, papers! You take 3 steps, create space, and let 2 more hands before the mast pour through behind you. Boarding is a tide. You are a small but decisive wave. Job split the second the rail stops arguing. A file peels toward the helm to still the ship's will. Another secures the powder so the gunner can sleep with both eyes later. The boatswain cuts what must be cut and saves what must be saved, because those lateen and other fore and aft sails may be your ticket out if a Royal Navy frigate shows up curious. The navigator takes possession of the chart table with the gentleness of a thief who hates drama. The surgeon checks both crews because dead men create admiralty courts faster than doubloons create friends. You speak in contracts, not threats. The quartermaster's voice goes calm enough to season soup as he lays terms. Lay down arms, hands before the mast. Officers to cabin, surgeon retained, cargo inventoried as prize, not plunder. Ransoms get discussed in nouns, not volume. Names, families, ports, Spanish dollars, pieces of 8. And the promise of a chest of clothes softens more spines than a pistol ever did. Myth says terror rules this theatre. History says clarity does. You are dangerous, yes, but you're also legible. Searching is a sacrament. Hatches lift, cargo breathes, and contraband tells on itself with smells. Cassel, indigo, wet wool, wine that turned to vinegar 2 storms ago. You mark bales and casks in chalk, while the cook ghosts along, making notes on anything with calories. And the carpenter frowns at barrels that want to leak on your temper. Doubloons appear like commas, not paragraphs, and the quartermaster translates spoils into shares before greed can invent poetry. Prize crews get names, routes, and a rendezvous that honors hurricanes and French patrols equally. Discipline buys speed. No looting outside the chalk. No knives where words will serve. No swagger that turns prisoners into stories useful to pirate hunters. The boatswain posts a quiet guard, and the gunner spikes any gun you don't plan to keep. The captain keeps half an eye on the horizon. Spanish guardacosta love a noisy neighbor, and the navigator checks tide and current, so you can separate ships without writing a love letter to a reef. The surgeon stitches the accident that nearly became an anecdote. Calm looks like mercy from the wrong angle. From the right one, it's logistics. Sometimes the prey gambles late. A hidden blade flashes, a helm jerks, a lantern rolls toward powder, like a drunk with opinions. This is where training gets loud. You end the problem quickly and loudly enough that its friends decide to be furniture. Then you return to sentences and lists, because Admiralty courts and execution dock have long memories and short patience for decorative violence. Your brand is fair when obeyed, and that brand pays dividends across a dozen future decks. Departure is as delicate as arrival. Lines off in the right order. Rig reset without ripping, crews separated like quarreling cousins. You assign a prize crew with a navigator who knows how to make dead reckoning, tell the truth, and a boatswain who can bully a tired mast into one more good day. The captain's sloop bears away with a friendliness that says, "See you after moonrise," and the quartermaster seals papers in oilskin, as if the sea were a clerk who loves to misfile. Lantern glow on wet decks becomes twin trails of light, headed toward a rendezvous and a payday day that tastes like grog bite and relief. Only then do you let the story sit down. The cook sends food that forgives shaking hands. The surgeon pours a quiet measure into a tin that tastes like courage's little brother. The boatswain lets the shanty back into the air at half volume. You count pieces of 8 without bragging and Spanish dollars without superstition. Then tuck 2 coins where no press gangs can find them. The wind trims itself in the rigging like a satisfied cat. You'll sleep, and you'll earn it, because tomorrow might be a port with fences and pardons and amnesties pretending to be solutions. Or it might be a shout from the mast, a frigate prey on the rim, and the same old arithmetic asking for your best handwriting again. If you want the truth behind Golden Age of piracy life, watch The Navigator at dawn while everyone else yawns. He's half mathematician, half weather whisperer, with tar and pitch reek in his clothes, and yesterday's sums in his head. Life aboard a pirate ship depends on his quiet arithmetic. Speed by the logline, time by the glass, course by the compass, and nerve by the ounce. In sea roving reality, close enough keeps you off reefs and inside profit. Myth versus history is simple here. Sea rovers weren't lucky. They were relentlessly approximate in the right direction. Dead reckoning is your daily spell. You throw a knotted line over the stern, count knots before the sand runs out, and note the heading while hemp lines groaning tell you what the hull thinks of your plan. The navigator adds leeway for wind, current for rumor, and yesterday's error so you don't repeat it with conviction. It's algebra with salt spray on your lips. When you've done it for weeks, the map in your skull starts arguing with the paper one, and that argument saves lives. At noon, the sky gives you a receipt. The navigator lifts a battered quadrant or backstaff, sights the sun, and marks latitude with a pencil that's more authority than any captain. You hold your breath not because of romance, but because the deck wobbles and creaking timbers love to ruin decimals. Latitude is the easy cousin. Longitude is the moody one you bluff with time and coastline. Privateers turned pirates call it knowing where we are and get back to reefing. The navigator calls it being less wrong than yesterday and sleeps an hour when he can. Night turns the rig into a planetarium that charges nothing and lies rarely. Polaris sits like a nail. Southern Cross visits farther down the lanes where French patrols nap in warm anchorages. Stars don't give longitude, but they point straight and shame drunks. Powder monkeys learn to name 5. Gunner's mates learn 10. The quartermaster knows enough to call nonsense on a fancy tale. You'll catch yourself using constellations like road signs, which is exactly what buccaneers did while pretending they were born with gills. Coastwise work, pilotage, is where nerves earn shares. You slip along cays and shoals at dusk, with a hand lead sounding the bottom and a leadsman chanting depth like a hymn. By the mark 5, and a quarter less 6, the line comes up with smelling mud, river nearby, or gritty sand, open bar ahead. Captain trusts that chorus more than any printed chart. A schooner with 4.5 sails can crab up a creek others wouldn't try. A brigantine cheats the tide with short tacks. A sloop slides where frigate prey fears splinters. Geography is your best weapon that doesn't spark. Currents are enemies you can't stab. The Florida current will hand you to a Royal Navy frigate if you drift daydreaming. The Antilles streams shove sloops sideways into stories you don't want to tell. The navigator reads swirls like a gambler reads faces, adds an invisible arrow to every course line, and warns the boatswain when steer north actually means point northwest and trust me. Sea dogs grumble, then nod when the headland appears exactly where the math promised. Wind has personalities and grudges. Trades are your friends. Steady east winds across Atlantic Caribbean piracy routes that make fast rigs grin and lateen flare like smart capes. Variables near the doldrums are sulky children. Squalls are fast tempers. Hurricanes are judges who don't listen. Reefing early is humility with a paycheck. Heave to is wisdom with a pulse. The captain orders, the boatswain trims, the navigator chooses pain now, or humiliation later. Choose pain now. You eat with your own teeth. Fog teaches patience you won't learn from sermons. Bells on the bow. A man on the sprit with eyes that water and a rope around his waist, and the cook swearing he can smell land before you can see it. You shorten sail, you count breaths, and you remember that sound travels farther than courage. When the grey thins and the sand spit shows its teeth, you kiss the navigator in your heart, and the carpenter patches the scrape your pride refuses to admit. Landfall etiquette turns guesswork into ritual. If you're careening, you want mangroves, a tide that minds a schedule, and a beach that forgives mistakes. If you're selling contraband, you want a harbour with fencers who take pieces of 8 without poetry. The navigator marks bearings on prominent trees. The quartermaster sketches a cove like a recipe, and the captain trains everyone to find this hiding spot again after hurricanes rearrange the furniture. Outlaw mariners keep their libraries in notebooks and scars. Signals keep pilotage from becoming pantomime. 2 lanterns for water shoaling. 1 gun and a flag for heave to. A horn from the longboat when the bar says, try at slack. At night, the navigator talks to the shore, with dots of light that look like gossip to anyone else. Prize crews learn the language quickly, because missing a turn costs more than missing a joke. The boatswain times everything with his whistle, until even gulls and shanties keep time. In ports, you pay pilots not just for knowledge, but for forgetting. A good pilot knows which sandbar moved last storm, and which Spanish Guarda Costa gained a brother-in-law with a new boat. He also knows when to shrug, convincingly, if pirate hunters ask whether a certain sloop ever kissed this inlet. Spanish dollars and doubloons persuade. Your tone persuades longer. Quartermaster handles both accounts. Stormcraft is navigation's exam. When hurricanes creep over the horizon wearing purple, the navigator stops pretending luck is a plan. He chooses sea room over romance, calculates heave to angles that won't drown you, and promises the captain a latitude where the sky isn't personal. If you live, you thank him with shares and silence. If you die a little, torn canvas, bent spars, you call it tuition and mend. And as the stars come back polite after hell, he sets a fresh course towards spoil, and ransoms like nothing happened, because pirate day to day leaves no space for dramatists. By the time you can sketch a coastline from memory and smell a river mouth before it rounds the point, you realize navigation isn't a trick, it's a temperament. You prefer quiet calculations to loud bravado, and the sea seems to prefer you, which is perfect, because the next demand isn't a waypoint at all. It's a wall of weather with a name and a schedule, hurricanes, and the crew will need every lesson you've banked when the sky forgets its manners and the ocean starts grading on a curve. You feel a hurricane long before you see it. The air goes heavy, the swell stiffens, and gulls and shanties vanish like they know the script. In real golden age of piracy life, storms were the supreme pirate hunters. No flag, no mercy, perfect jurisdiction. Tar and pitch reek grows sweeter as heat presses the deck, and even the bravest sea dogs speak softer around the galley fire. Hemp lines groaning change pitch, a kind of throat clearing from the rigging that says, "Choose humility now, or the ocean will choose it for you." You look to the captain, but the navigator has already begun the math that buys survival. Preparation is ritual, not panic. The boatswain calls hands before the mast, and you reef down to fighting cloth while the sky still pretends to be polite. Fast rigs: sloop, brigantine, schooner, shed canvas. Until 18 and other fore and aft sails lie flat as truth. Square topsails are brailed and blessed. The carpenter dogs hatches, shores bulkheads, and listens to creaking timbers like a priest hearing confessions. The gunner lashes guns and clears the deck of anything that can become shrapnel under cannon slap waves. The quartermaster seals the chest and reads the article storm lines aloud, because discipline prevents funerals. Food and water get thoughtful. The cook pushes hot, salty stew early, so bellies have ballast, then rations grog bite to keep minds steady without turning courage into chaos. Water casks are wedged and chocked along the spine, so one rogue roll doesn't convert your fresh supply into a murder weapon. The surgeon checks splints and needles, lays out lint and vinegar, and reminds everyone which knives are for ropes and which are for flesh. If limes exist, he passes them like amulets. Scurvy won't kill you tonight, but recovery will be shorter if your gums don't bleed fear. Storms eat calories. You feed the crew before the sky feeds on you. The navigator's job now is to choose pain. He weighs sea room against lee shores, calculates leeway you can stomach, and sets a course that insults pride but spares ribs. Dead reckoning becomes living theology. Speed by feel, time by prayer, course by what won't put you on a reef you'll only meet once. Heave to, he says, and the ship obeys, bow cocked to the punch, so she rides, not runs. Myth versus history. Hurricanes don't get conquered. They get bargained with by people who know which bargains are lies. You tighten your cloak and become a small, useful verb. Heaving to is a choreography of mercy. The helm is lashed, a staysail backed, the mainsail reefed to a postage stamp, and the rudder angled so the hull meets the waves like a boxer who's learned to slip, not stop. Hemplines groaning become a heartbeat. Every creak becomes a word you can translate. The bosun posts men at critical lashings and tells jokes dry as hardtack to keep knees from locking. The captain walks with a hand on the shrouds, eyes measuring every toppling hill that comes to inspect you. "Steady," he says, "to you or the ship or both." Then the wall hits. Rain knives sideways, wind writes your name and tries to erase it. Lantern glow on wet decks turns to sparks and reptile eyes. You can't hear orders, you can only see them. Fingers stabbing, mouths shaping one-syllable verbs, a quartermaster's fist disguising fear as authority. You keep low, 3 points of contact, and you don't argue with rope that wants your attention. In this theater, a powder monkey size becomes a superpower, and a swab's mop a brace against sliding into tomorrow. The ocean becomes a judge, who already knows the verdict. You appeal with seamanship only. Below, the ship sounds like a hospital in a war poem. The carpenter taps frames, listens for a note he refuses to hear, and plugs seams that decide to experiment with honesty. The surgeon straps a man to a table, and stitches by lightning, not by lamp, while the cook guards the fire like it's a baby with a crown. Barrels grunt. Chains complain, doubloons, pieces of 8, and Spanish dollars forget dignity and rattle like pebbles. Life aboard a pirate ship in a blow is equal opportunity humbling. Men of fortune, boatswain, gunner, all leveled by physics. The crew's minds need handling as much as the rig. The quartermaster walks the line, not to punish but to anchor. His voice says, "We've done this, even if some haven't." He calls out, shares owed to men who once rode out storms worse than this, paying courage forward in memory. Superstition is allowed to breathe, a coin under the mast step, a touch to the charm at the shrouds, a whispered promise to the sea that widows will be remembered if she spares this deck. Respectability politics doesn't live here, survival politics does. You don't mock a talisman that buys one more minute of nerve. When spars go, because sometimes they do, the bosun becomes surgeon to wood. Axes flash. Rigging hisses. What can't be saved is cut free before it turns assassin. You mourn sail like you mourn teeth. Privately, while spitting blood and smiling anyway. The gunner takes stock of powder as if it were air. Nothing stays wet if human hands can prevent it. A brigantine can still claw off a lee shore with one honest sail. A sloop can still pray its way across a breaker line if her hull holds truth. This is the part of Atlantic Caribbean piracy ballads skip because it sticks in the throat. The eye is a lie. You use wisely. When the sudden hush lands, you clear pumps, drink water, swap the worst men off the worst lines, and fix what can be fixed in 10 minutes, not what needs an afternoon. The navigator marks position with a sailor's memory and a thief's urgency. You don't congratulate the ship, you thank her under your breath and get ready for the backhand. The second wall arrives colder, meaner. Embarrassed, it hesitated. You meet it with the same calm you practiced before anyone believed you could. After is a quiet, no prayer ever captured. The sky unknots itself. The sea remembers gentleness. Men count fingers, friends, and blessings in that order. The articles awaken. Compensation for wounds, rations for spent bodies, a small pour to honor a name not answering. The quartermaster and navigator audit losses, the carpenter lists wood and grief. The cook boils something that smells like forgiveness. You hang lines, dry hearts, and learn again that survival is a habit before it's a headline. As is history. The storm is not your story. Your recovery is. Then comes speed. Oddly enough. You replace what you can, jury rig the rest, and turn fast rigs back into the predators they were yesterday. Careening goes on the calendar. Prize crews get reviewed. The surgeon relabels bottles so nobody sleeps forever by accident. And as gulls and shanties creep back, the lookout finally risks his favorite words. Hurricanes reset reputations. A crew that rode one well moves like a single animal in the next chase. A captain who didn't panic will be obeyed when a frigate prey tries to run clever. When you reach port, the storm writes the receipts. Fencers pay better for cargo torn from a rival's hull than for tales about the sky's opinion of you, but the tavern's back room will still linger on your story. Pirate hunters, Spanish guardacosta, and French patrols won't care that you danced with weather. They'll care that you still have a ship. The ocean never promised fairness. The articles did, and they kept you alive long enough to spend them. Tomorrow, The wind will pretend to be your friend again, and you'll pretend to believe it, because men of fortune are fluent in necessary fictions. Reef early, heave to wisely, and never trust a calm that arrives with compliments. Dawn starts with the tar and pitch reek waking your nose before your eyes do, and a boatswain's whistle cutting the fog like a blade. You roll from the hammock, feel the cool plank underfoot, and step into a world already moving. Hemp lines groaning as the sloop stretches. Lantern glow on wet decks, paling into grey. This is pirate day today, not poster art. Hands before the mast washing down, swabs driving grit from seams so rot never earns a wage. The quartermaster's chalk sets the mood. Rations, water, small notes from the ledger that keep tempers from inventing reasons. It's the golden age of piracy life, which means breakfast and discipline arrive together. First watch hands the ship over like a living thing. The navigator checks last hour's dead reckoning and begins the quiet math for the next. The cook fights a sulking fire to coax tea and a stew that forgives lateness. You chew hard biscuit you've already tapped for weevils. Habit, not drama. Then share a slice of orange that tastes like insurance against scurvy. The surgeon does a walk-through of knuckles, blisters and pride. He saves his lectures for lulls because cannon smoke haze and ointments don't mix. Even now, the lookout is humming shanty fragments, warming the voice that will carry sail ho. Mid-morning is rope and rhythm. The boatswain leads sail drill until lateen and other fore and aft cloth set without wrinkles. The rigger net you throw at the wind, and it throws back speed. Reefing practice comes before the sky earns an opinion. Hands run aloft with sure feet, bodies finding balance where landfolk would find religion. You trim to a whisper on the weather side, and the ship purrs. Fast rigs spread for ambush and escape. Myth says pirates flew skulls all day. History says they flew good geometry and nerves. Near noon the deck turns into a clock. Hourglass runs. Log line pays out, and the navigator lifts a battered quadrant toward a sun that keeps its appointments. Latitude becomes a number that tastes like relief. Longitude remains a riddle you solve with coastline, current, and memory. The quartermaster hears the figure, nods once, and changes nothing. Numbers are for steering shares as much as courses. If you're lucky, a gull lands. If you're luckier, it doesn't, because superstition says visitors with wings make storms remember you. Afternoon is maintenance, the unromantic muscle of survival. Carpenters listen to creaking timbers and answer with wedges. The gunner babies his iron children, swabs, worms, oils, and whispers to them, like a man proposing good behavior. Powder monkeys check kegs. The cook barters spices from contraband into morale. The surgeon sharpens, which makes everyone nicer to each other. You stitch a sail, shake out a line, and pocket a small piece of Spanish dollars, stitched into hem, not jingle. Because press gangs have long fingers and taverns short memories. Late light is hunting time. The lookout earns his keep with a syllable that rearranges the ship. Sail! The captain chooses angle, the boatswain trims, and you become arithmetic at 8 knots. False colours up, Dutch to soothe a Garda-coster, French to hush an English coaster, while the quartermaster counts minutes like coin. A warning shot across the bows is grammar both crews read. If they heave to, prize crews form. If they run, the gunner feeds stern chasers, and your rig proves why pirates prefer fore and aft. When the deck stills again, the sun is lower, and your pulse is higher, and you remember why shares taste better than wages. Evening returns you to markets on water. Under shaded lamps, cargo breathes. Cacao, indigo, tools, medicine, booty with better resale than romance. Pieces of 8 sing in canvas, Spanish dollars clink like punctuation, a shy doubloon warms a palm. The quartermaster's ledger turns spoils into spoils divided. First over the rail gets the promised sweetener. Injury pay lands where the surgeon's thread left a story. Myth versus history. There's less bellowing than you expect, and more bookkeeping than you'd guess. Dog watches culture hour. Shanties pace the last chores. A fiddler bullies cheer from sore backs. Someone tells a tale about buccaneers, freebooters and sea dogs, who outran Royal Navy frigates by knowing a creek the charts forgot. You learn slang that prevents accidents and jokes that prevent despair. Grogbite shows up measured, not poured, comfort with guardrails, because knives sleep lighter when rum sleeps deeper. The quartermaster walks the deck like a metronome, making sure tomorrow still has a crew. Night watch tastes of salt and listening. The sky's a map you can trust, and the navigator names stars like old friends who owe him money. Signals become firefly grammar. 1 lantern for course, 2 for shoal, 3 for shut up and move. You keep 3 points of contact and 1 eye on the boom, because the ocean adores a napper. Somewhere out there, French patrols and pirate hunters prowl. Somewhere nearer, your ship breathes steadily, alive, because 100 small habits kept their promises. Middle watch is philosophy. Hammocks sway like forgiveness, and you consider the math of your life. Shares versus wages, plunder versus spoils, risk versus rope. The articles feel fair at this hour. Clear rules, known penalties, mercy priced into the system. You touch the coin sewn into your waistband and wonder if men of fortune is courage or marketing. Then a wave slaps the hull like a wake-up sermon, and you go back to being a verb. Check lashings, scan horizon, whisper thanks to a charm tied on a stay. Pre-dawn is when weather chooses favorites. If the east looks bruised, you reef early, because hurricanes don't care about your schedule and squalls enjoy humiliating optimism. Cook starts a thin miracle. The surgeon walks his rounds like an usher. The quartermaster posts a day's chores before yesterday's stories can invent new ones. You stretch spine, roll shoulders, and feel the sloop lean with a lover's memory. Another day is snuck aboard without asking. Tradition signs for it anyway. And then the sun lifts, the watch changes, and the cycle rolls on, careening on the calendar, fences in the next port, amnesties rumor-shaped on some governor's desk. The golden age on paper looks like flags and pistols. The golden age in your bones feels like rhythm and restraint. You bank sleep, you bank trust, you bank coin and scars. You hope become stories. Ahead, a horizon. Behind, a wake. You've stood at the rail with salt drying on your lips and a rulebook humming under your skin. Now you know the secret. Pirates didn't beat empires with luck. They beat them with seamanship, incentives, and a brand that traveled faster than wind. The captain barked only when speed mattered. The quartermaster did math that felt like justice. The articles turned chaos into a chorus. Under cannon smoke, haze and gulls and shanties, men of fortune built small democracies that paid for courage and punished waste. The sea was merciless. The code was merciful enough. Ask yourself, which habit would change your world tomorrow? Writing clear articles for your own crew, paying fairly for risk, rehearsing before the crisis, or choosing angles over force. Which detail stuck? The calling out, heave to, heard across water. The powder monkey sprint, the surgeon's quiet invoice for a saved arm, the navigator's noon sight claimed from a rolling deck. Where do you still meet the hunter's net? Rules dressed as storms, storms dressed as rules. And how will you trim to it instead of letting it roll you? History lands best when it becomes muscle memory. Maybe you'll read the room like a horizon. Pick principles you'd board for, and keep your promises as if shares depended on it. Maybe you'll skip a fight you can win loudly, and win it quietly, instead, like a sloop shaving a weather edge. And maybe, on the worst day, you'll remember how heaving to isn't surrender. It's strategy that lets you live to chase again. If this voyage gave you new eyes for old legends, share it with someone who loves hidden mechanics and honest drama. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into strange corners of the past. And tell me below where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I use your maps to chart the next story. Fair winds, steady hands, and may your ropes never lie.